Chapter 1853. Jun Wuya liked the wine brought by Hong Xiu very much because it tasted good. Watching Jun Wuya drinking one cup after another, Xiao Chen didn't feel anything at first, but gradually, Xiao Chen noticed some clues. One should know that the wine brought by Hong Xiu was the best immortal wine in the entire Hachibara Senkai. It was brewed with various heavenly treasures, and the energy contained in it was extremely pure. Under normal circumstances, Xiao Chen and the others wouldn't drink too much of such wine. After all, the energy in the wine needed time to be refined. Once they couldn't refine it, or drank too much, it would be harmful to their bodies. But looking at Jun Wuya in front of him, from the time he sat down until now, it had only been less than an hour, and he had already drunk 3 whole pots. Even an immortal emperor wouldn't dare to drink 3 pots of immortal wine like this. However, Jun Wuya didn't seem to be affected at all. His face wasn't red, his breath wasn't out of breath, and there wasn't any fluctuation in his body. Not even a trace of qi was emitted from his body. This didn't affect Jun Wuya at all. This made Xiao Chen puzzled. What was the cultivation base of Jun Wuya? One should know that drinking this wine didn't depend on one's alcohol tolerance, but one's cultivation base. The higher one's cultivation base was, the more he could drink, because the amount of spiritual qi he could withstand was greater. On the other hand, those with lower cultivation base would naturally drink less. For those low-level cultivators who hadn't broken through to the saint realm, perhaps only 1 drop was enough to make them drunk. Xiao Chen was puzzled when he saw Jun Wuya drinking, but Jun Wuya didn't seem to have the intention to explain. He just continued drinking his wine. While the 3 of them were drinking, something else was happening in the first wilderness. It had been almost 3 months since Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu had disappeared. Luo Li, Hong Lian, Fu Rui, Quan Feng and the others had also returned to the first wilderness 2 months ago. In the beginning, Hachibara Senkai used a lot of effort to inquire about the whereabouts of Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu. Unfortunately, it was to no avail. Even until now, they still didn't know where Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu were imprisoned. They only knew that their life tokens were still intact, so they were sure that both of them were still alive. However, 2 months had passed, and a storm had swept through the Hachibara Senkai. The entire Hachibara Senkai had undergone a great change. It might be an exaggeration to say that it was a great change, because in the eyes of the sector lords, it wasn't a big deal. However, if Xiao Chen knew about this, he would be furious. This was because Wine Taoist, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling and Luan Luan were all imprisoned in Hachibara Senkai's celestial prison. As for why the 4 of them were imprisoned, it was needless to say that the culprit was Mu Fan. He returned to the 8 Wastelands world before Guan Hong and the others. After Guan Hong and the others returned, Mu Fan found out that Xiao Chen had stayed behind alone. He quickly took the opportunity to make things difficult for Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing. All along, Luo Li and Hong Lian thought that someone had deliberately leaked information to the 8 Wastelands. In other words, there was a mole among the people who had gone to the second wilderness. After finding out about Luo Li and Hong Lian's suspicions, Mu Fan was extremely vicious. He immediately threw the blame to Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing. He insisted that Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing had betrayed everyone, that they were spies sent by the 8 Wastelands, and that they had presented a lot of evidence. Of course, these so-called evidence were all forged by Mu Fan. However, in the face of Mu Fan's forgery, there were some things that Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing couldn't explain clearly. For example, their identities in Hachibara Senkai. The 2 of them were originally from the 8 Wastelands, and they had once fought against the Hachibara Senkai. Many people knew this, and this time, the 2 of them suddenly appeared in the Hachibara Senkai. Previously, because of Xiao Chen's presence, no one dared to suspect the 2 of them. However, now that Xiao Chen was no longer around, some people with ulterior motives, or those who didn't mind watching the show, naturally didn't suspect anything. Their identities were already a little awkward. In addition, without Xiao Chen's testimony, and with Mu Fan's strong targeting, Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing were quickly imprisoned in the celestial prison. A few days later, the Wine Taoist and Luan Luan were also sent to the celestial prison by Mu Fan. It was obvious that he wanted to kill the four of them. In this regard, Luo Li and Hong Lian came forward to stop him at first, but later on, for some reason, the two of them remained silent. Naturally, no one would speak up for the four of them. In fact, most people could guess why Luo Li and Hong Lian were silent. The main reason was because of Xiao Chen. Now that Xiao Chen had fallen into the hands of the Eight Wastelands, although he was not dead yet, it was very difficult to rescue Xiao Chen. Everyone knew this, and it could even be said that it was almost impossible. Since Xiao Chen was no longer around, why should the people around Xiao Chen offend Mu Fan for them? To put it bluntly, it was because Xiao Chen was no longer around. Luo Li and Hong Lian felt that it was not worth offending Mu Fan for Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the other three. In addition, there might be something between the realm lords that no one knew about. Therefore, Luo Li and Hong Lian chose to remain silent, which basically meant that they tacitly agreed with Mu Fan's actions. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. For Long Qing and the others, Xiao Chen was the tree that supported them. Now that this tree had fallen, they naturally dared to speak up in the face of Mu Fan's attack. It was a little desolate, but this was human nature. It was cruel but true. As someone once said to Xiao Chen, a living genius was a genius, but a dead genius was just a pile of yellow soil. In the first wilderness, Mu Fan was currently sitting in the cave that he had obtained. A young genius of the first wilderness said respectfully to Mu Fan, "Senior brother, everything has been arranged. But if we do this, isn't it a little, you have to dig up the roots when you cut the weeds. Go, do it as soon as possible. I don't want to see those four people again." The genius said hesitantly, but before he could finish, Mu Fan had already interrupted him with a cold snort. Xianyuan Ling, Long Qing, and the other three had been locked up in the celestial prison. However, this was obviously not Mu Fan's ultimate goal. Mu Fan's ultimate goal was to kill Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the other three. Only when the four of them were dead would Mu Fan be at ease. As for Xiao Chen, Mu Fan didn't think that he could escape from the hands of the Eight Wastelands. Perhaps Xiao Chen was currently suffering from inhumane torture. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1854. Mu Fan's eyes were filled with endless murderous intent. However, no one knew how satisfied Mu Fan was at the moment. He had been fighting with Xiao Chen all this while, but in the end, Xiao Chen was still killed by him. As long as he got rid of Xianyuan Ling, Long Qing and the rest, everything would be over. Mu Fan waited until the supreme talent of the first domain retreated before he couldn't help but sneer. The one who has the last laugh is the real winner. Xiao Chen, you didn't expect this, did you? From Mu Fan's point of view, Xiao Chen was the one who had fallen into such a predicament. If Xiao Chen had not insisted on staying behind to save Hongxiu, he could have successfully escaped with Guan Hong and the others. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen was foolish enough to stay behind and seek his own death for the sake of some so-called friendship. Mu Fan didn't know that Xiao Chen had stayed behind to save Hongxiu. Not only did he not die, but he had also met Jun Wuya. It could be said that this was a blessing in disguise. Xiao Chen had encountered a great opportunity, and because of this opportunity, the gap between Xiao Chen and Mu Fan had widened. At this time, Xiao Chen was already a mighty figure at the beginning of the celestial venerable realm, while Mu Fan was still only at the lesser perfection of the celestial realm. This was the gap between them, and it would only grow bigger as time passed. Many people said that God was watching what man did. Karma was something that no one could say for sure. Who dared to say that karma didn't exist in this world? What you sowed would naturally be what you reap. Xiao Chen had gained a blessing in disguise, but Mu Fan was still feeling complacent. Mu Fan had already decided to kill Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, and the rest. At the same time, in the celestial prison of Hachibra Senkai, Xian Yuanling, Long Qing, Wine Daoist, and Luan Luan were imprisoned in separate light cells. The black pillar of light descended from the sky, forming a unique cage. It was impossible for anyone who was enveloped by the black pillar of light to escape. Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, and the Wine Daoist were fine, but Luan Luan was scared out of her wits. Although Luan Luan had existed for an unknown number of years, at the end of the day, Luan Luan's consciousness was still that of a 4- or 5-year-old child. At this moment, being locked up alone in a dark cage, Luan Luan seemed to have returned to the time before she met Xiao Chen. She was hugging her legs tightly in a corner. Her intelligent large eyes were filled with fear as she constantly softly muttered to herself, "Daddy, when are you coming to save Luan Luan? Luan Luan doesn't like this place." Xiao Chen's sudden disappearance and sudden imprisonment made Luan Luan very scared. At this time, Luan Luan only wanted Xiao Chen. She only wanted to be in Xiao Chen's arms. Xiao Chen didn't know about the Hachibra Senkai. On the broken continent of the Second Wilderness, Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu were preparing to return to the First Wilderness. However, there was a problem. They didn't have a spaceship. How were they going to return to the First Wilderness? Were they going to fly back with their own strength? It was too difficult to fly back to the First Wilderness directly. However, Jun Wuya didn't care about it at all. He looked at Xiao Chen's grave expression and said with a smile, "Let's go. I'll send you back. Settle the matter as soon as possible. We still have to come back." Jun Wuya personally sent Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu back to the Second Wilderness. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a smile. It would be much more convenient to have an immortal emperor like Jun Wuya send them back. Although the spaceship's speed wasn't as fast as a spaceship, at least their safety was guaranteed. He still treated Jun Wuya as an immortal emperor. However, this thought quickly disappeared. Jun Wuya didn't wait for Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu to reply. He waved his hand and the three of them disappeared in an instant. Speaking of Jun Wuya, although you couldn't feel the slightest overbearingness from him, it wasn't difficult to see that Jun Wuya was actually a very overbearing person from many ordinary things. In other words, Jun Wuya's overbearingness was cultivated because of him. He rarely cared about other people's feelings. At the same time, no matter what he said, he would completely not give others a chance to refute. Just like now, when Jun Wuya said he would send Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu back to the First Wilderness, he didn't even dare to ask them if they were willing or if they had any other questions. Jun Wuya directly took them away. To put it bluntly, Jun Wuya didn't care about other people's feelings. This was also a reflection of his strength. They thought it would take at least a month to return to the First Wilderness without a spaceship. After all, even if they used a spaceship, it would take at least half a month to reach the First Wilderness from the Second Wilderness. Moreover, the three of them didn't have a spaceship, so they had to rely on their own strength to travel. However, in less than 2 hours, when Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu came back to their senses, they discovered that they were already outside the First Wilderness. Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu were still conscious, but they could not move at all. It was as if they were being squeezed by something. In less than 2 hours, the three of them had arrived outside the First Barren territory. They looked at Jun Wuya with their mouths agape. This was too terrifying. In less than 2 hours. Immortal emperors definitely didn't have such strength. For the first time, Xiao Chen had doubts about Jun Wuya's cultivation base. However, Jun Wuya didn't seem to mind. He chuckled softly and said, "Go ahead. Finish your business as soon as possible." For the first time, he had doubts about Jun Wuya. However, Jun Wuya didn't give Xiao Chen an answer. As soon as his voice fell, Jun Wuya disappeared into thin air. Although Xiao Chen was puzzled, he couldn't do anything about it. After a moment of silence, Xiao Chen flew towards the first wilderness with Hong Xiu. The entrance to the first wilderness was naturally guarded by the experts of the Hachibara Senkai. When the immortal venerable in charge of guarding the entrance saw Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu, his expression changed instantly. He naturally knew about the internal changes of the Hachibara Senkai. He also knew that it was a battle between Mu Fan and Xiao Chen. He thought that Xiao Chen wouldn't be able to come back. Who would have thought that Xiao Chen would actually come back? Xiao Chen's eyes flashed when he saw the immortal venerable's expression. He landed in front of the immortal venerable. Before the immortal venerable could speak, Xiao Chen spoke first. What happened? The immortal venerable's eyes flashed with panic when he saw Xiao Chen. Obviously, something had happened, and it must have something to do with him. That was why Xiao Chen questioned him directly. Chapter 1855. After being missing for several months, Xiao Chen had finally returned. However, after returning to the first wilderness, Xiao Chen was not happy at all. On the contrary, he heard some unimaginable news. Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the other three had been locked up in the celestial prison. Upon hearing that the four of them had been locked up in the celestial prison, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed coldly. He looked at the immortal venerable and said coldly, "What else do you know? Tell me everything." Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, the immortal venerable stammered. Xiao Chen basically understood the whole story from the immortal venerable. It turned out that it was all Mu Fan's doing. After Guan Hong and the others had returned, Mu Fan had framed Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling as spies from the Eight Wilderness. As Mu Fan was the Hachibara Senkai's heir apparent and Xiao Chen had gone missing, no one in the entire Hachibara Senkai stood up for Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling. Indeed, the tea had cooled down after Xiao Chen was gone. No one was willing to offend Mu Fan for Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling. Even the two sector lords, Luoli and Hong Lian, remained silent. In the end, Mu Fan successfully locked up Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the other three in the celestial prison. A flame of anger burned in Xiao Chen's heart. It was Mu Fan again. Of course, in addition to anger, there was also a strong sense of disappointment in Xiao Chen's heart. Xiao Chen had many friends in the Hachibara Senkai, but at this time, no one stood up for Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling. If only one of the other heirs of Kunlun had stood up for Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling, perhaps Mu Fan would not have been able to lock up the four of them in the celestial prison so easily. Everyone wanted to play it safe. Everyone wanted to calculate the gains and losses. Perhaps in their eyes, all of this was not worth it. After all, Xiao Chen had gone missing, and Mu Fan had become the only person who could refine the will of the heavenly way. His status had risen again. Perhaps this was the reason why Luoli and Hong Lian had chosen to remain silent. However, if everyone wanted to please Mu Fan, why did they have to exchange their elder brother and sister's lives? The immortal venerable's eyes were filled with coldness. Sensing Xiao Chen's aura, he did not dare say a word. He did not know why, but after a few months, the pressure that Xiao Chen gave him was extremely strong. Of course, the immortal venerable did not realize that Xiao Chen's cultivation had reached the immortal venerable level. It was far from what he could compare to when he was in the immortal realm. Sensing the terrifying pressure from Xiao Chen, Hong Xiu naturally felt the change in Xiao Chen's aura. However, she stood firmly by Xiao Chen's side. She did not say anything, nor did she try to persuade him. In her heart, no matter what happened to Xiao Chen, she was willing to stay by Xiao Chen's side. A cold light flashed in Xiao Chen's blood-red eyes. After a while, he said coldly, "Let's go." Then, Xiao Chen brought Hong Xiu and the two of them went straight to the immortal realm. A long time after Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu left, the immortal venerable slowly regained his senses. He then immediately sent a message to the sector lords about Xiao Chen's return. There was still some distance from the entrance of the first wilderness to the immortal realm. Therefore, before Shao Chen and Hong Xiu arrived, the ancestral sector lord of Hachibra Senkai had already received the news. Shao Chen and Hong Xiu were fine, and they had successfully returned to the Hachibra Senkai. This was definitely a joyous news, but at this moment, the sector lords were not happy at all. The reason was simple. Because of the Longqing, Xianyuan Ling and the other three had been locked up in the celestial prison. Furthermore, during this period of time, it could be said that the various sector lords had completely allowed Mu Fan to suppress Shao Chen. Not a single one of them stepped forward to speak up for Shao Chen. As such, when Shao Chen returned, one could imagine how angry he would be when he found out about this matter. In the main hall of the Seventh Realm, Luo Li sat on the main seat with a complicated expression. Below him, Li Qiu also had a complicated expression. He sighed softly and said, "Sector Lord, Shao Chen has returned." "Yes, but it has already happened," Luo Li said faintly. Shao Chen had indeed returned, but it had indeed happened. There was no medicine for regret in this world, and it was impossible to turn back time. Therefore, what had happened, and no one could change it. Luo Li didn't know what Shao Chen was feeling now, but based on his understanding of Shao Chen, Longqing, Xianyuan Ling, Wine Daoist, and Luan Luan were definitely the most important people to Shao Chen. This time, the sector lords had allowed Mu Fan to deal with the four of them. When Shao Chen found out, he would definitely be furious. There was no doubt about it. Luo Li didn't know how to face Shao Chen, so he didn't know how to feel about Shao Chen's return. Perhaps if this hadn't happened, Luo Li would have been very happy to hear that Shao Chen had returned safely. But now, Luo Li knew that Shao Chen's attitude towards the Hachibra Senkai had probably cracked. Luo Li and Hong Lian both had complicated feelings, but the other sector lords, such as Yi Xian and Qin Yun, were very curious about Shao Chen's return. Previously, when Shao Chen had stayed behind alone, everyone thought that Shao Chen must have been captured alive by the Ba Huang side. But now, Shao Chen and Hong Xiu had actually returned safely. No one believed that the Ba Huang side would take the initiative to release Shao Chen and Hong Xiu. This was obviously impossible. Then, how did Shao Chen and Hong Xiu return safely? Where did the two of them go in the past few months, and what did they experience? They were curious, but at the same time, many people felt that with Shao Chen's return, Hachibra Senkai would probably not be peaceful again. In the second realm, in Guan Hong's cave, after hearing the news of Shao Chen's return, Guan Hong sat in the pavilion in the courtyard and sighed softly as he muttered to himself. Brother Shao Chen, he knew Shao Chen's temperament. After learning that the four of them had been imprisoned in the celestial prison, Shao Chen definitely wouldn't stop until he turned the world upside down. This was especially true for Mu Fan. It was as if Guan Hong could already see Shao Chen returning in a menacing manner. At the same time, Guan Hong also knew that the fragile relationship between him and Shao Chen, which had been built up with great difficulty, could be said to have been completely shattered because of this incident. Not only him, but Fu Rui, Quan Feng, Qiu Ru, Lu Xiao, and even Yi Xiao were probably no longer Shao Chen's friends. At least, that was how Shao Chen saw it. This was because none of them stood up for Longqing and the other three in this matter, and allowed Mu Fan to imprison the four of them in the celestial prison. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1856. Guan Hong knew that the relationship between the heirs of Kunlun Field and Shao Chen would probably end here. From now on, they would probably be strangers. But what could he do about it? Everything was their own choice. Not only Guan Hong, but Fu Rui, Quan Feng, and Qiu Ru had also heard the news of Shao Chen's return. They sighed helplessly in their hearts. While Guan Hong and the others were sighing, 5 heavens prides from the first realm arrived at the entrance of the celestial prison. Mu Fan had asked them to come. They only had one purpose, and that was to kill Long Qing, Xianyuanling, and the other three. They had already arranged everything, so the immortal venerable guarding the celestial prison did not stop them. He immediately let them into the celestial prison. Mu Fan had imprisoned Long Qing, Xianyuanling, and the other three. As if that was not enough, he wanted to take their lives. While the 5 heavens prides from the first realm were entering the celestial prison, on the other side, in Yi Zhao's cave residence in the 8th realm. At this moment Yi Zhao's face was filled with pain. This was because he did not stand up for Long Qing, Xianyuanling, and the other three. Yi Zhao had made this choice because it was not worth it. If it were Shao Chen or Hongxiu, Yi Zhao would definitely choose to stand on Shao Chen's side without hesitation. However, for the sake of Xianyuanling and Long Qing, Yi Zhao hesitated. In the end, he chose to ignore them. Knowing the relationship between Long Qing, Xianyuanling, and Shao Chen, Yi Zhao naturally knew what would happen between him and Shao Chen in the future. Yi Zhao was not stupid. He naturally knew that his relationship with Shao Chen was not even comparable to a strand of hair on Long Qing's and Xianyuanling's legs. Yi Zhao sighed helplessly. But soon, he thought of something and cursed under his breath. Oh no, Yi Zhao could be said to be the one who understood Shao Chen's character the best. At this moment, everyone probably thought that Shao Chen would go to the 7th realm first. However, Yi Zhao was sure that Shao Chen would not go to the 7th realm. He would go directly to the celestial prison. Shao Chen's character. Suddenly thinking of this, Yi Zhao did not care about anything else. He immediately rushed to the celestial prison. On the other hand, just as Yi Zhao was about to leave, Shao Chen had already arrived at the entrance of the celestial prison. Just as Yi Zhao thought, Shao Chen did not return to the 7th realm at all. Instead, he went directly to the celestial prison. Standing at the entrance of the celestial prison, Shao Chen was blocked by several Hachibra Senkai experts who were responsible for guarding the celestial elder. Among them, the leader was an immortal venerable. However, he was only at the entry level of cultivation. In Shao Chen's eyes, he was obviously not strong enough. Shao Chen's expression was calm. However, if you looked closely, you would be able to see the thick coldness in his eyes and a flash of killing intent. Facing these Hachibra Senkai experts, Shao Chen said indifferently, "Get out of my way." He was not in the mood to talk nonsense with these guys. However, after hearing Shao Chen's words, the leader of the immortal venerable experts shouted without fear. Without the order of the Realm Lord, no one is allowed to enter the celestial prison. This immortal venerable expert was originally from the first realm. Naturally, he would not give any face to Shao Chen. Moreover, this was the Hachibra Senkai. Naturally, he was not afraid of Shao Chen. Would Shao Chen dare to attack him here? He did not seem to be afraid of Shao Chen at all. However, this immortal venerable expert's guess was not without reason. If it was before, Shao Chen might not have attacked. But now, Shao Chen was already disappointed in the Hachibra Senkai. Therefore, with Shao Chen's character, why would he care about the **T rules? Shao Chen did not say anything in the face of this immortal venerable expert's reply. Instead, he chose to attack. With a point of his finger, one of the immortal realm guards was sent flying by Shao Chen. He did not expect Shao Chen to suddenly attack. However, before this immortal venerable expert could recover from his shock, Shao Chen had already leaped up and attacked them. Shao Chen did not intend to talk nonsense with these people. Since they did not want to let him in, he would just fight his way in. Seeing that Shao Chen had made his move, Hongxiu, who was at the side, did not hesitate either. She followed Shao Chen and attacked the few people. In Hongxiu's opinion, Shao Chen was the most important. Hongxiu's action warmed Shao Chen's heart. However, Shao Chen obviously did not have the time to care about these things. Rescuing Long Qing and Xianyuanling was the most important thing to Shao Chen. Shao Chen opened the gate at the entrance. With Xiao Chen's current immortal venerable cultivation base, these people naturally could not stop him. However, at the same time, in the small world of the celestial prison, other than Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, Wine Daoist, Luan Luan and the four old dragons, the other 5 supreme geniuses of the first realm had appeared in front of them. The cultivation base of Long Qing and the other 3 had been completely sealed. When they were imprisoned in the celestial prison, the immortal emperor elders of the first realm had personally sealed their cultivation base. As for Wine Daoist, it was Mu Tai who had personally sealed his cultivation base. Seeing the appearance of these 5 supreme geniuses of the first realm, Xianyuan Ling remained calm and said indifferently, "What's wrong, Mu Fan? Do you still think it's not enough? Do you want to kill us?" Xianyuan Ling was keenly aware of the murderous intent flashing in the eyes of the 5 supreme geniuses. Upon hearing this, the 5 supreme geniuses of the first realm did not conceal their intentions. Anyway, in their opinion, Xianyuan Ling and the other 3 were already about to die. The leader of the group smiled coldly and nodded indifferently. "That's right. Senior brother Mu Fan said that we must remove the roots when we cut the weed. It's not a good thing for you to be alive." "Ha ha!" Xianyuan Ling burst into laughter upon hearing the leader's answer. Looking at the laughing Xianyuan Ling, the supreme genius said coldly, "You're about to die and you're still laughing. Why can't I laugh? Aren't you afraid that my third brother will come back one day if you want to kill the 4 of us?" Xianyuan Ling stopped laughing and looked at the supreme genius. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's name, the supreme genius was obviously taken aback. Xiao Chen was definitely not someone to be trifled with. Moreover, this guy was even crazier than Mu Fan. There was an instinctive fear in his heart, but he quickly regained his senses and pretended to be calm. It's still uncertain whether Xiao Chen will come back or not. Even if he comes back, so what? Do you think the Hachiber Senkai will allow him to cover the sky with one hand? It was as if he was not afraid of Xiao Chen. However, as soon as his voice fell, an indifferent voice sounded behind him. "I don't know if I can cover the sky with one hand, but now you have to die." Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1857. Xiao Chen, Hong Xiu, and the severely injured Celestial Venerable appeared behind him. Then, Xiao Chen, Hong Xiu, and the severely injured Celestial Venerable appeared behind him. Xiao Chen's sudden appearance stunned Xianyuan Ling, but soon, his eyes were filled with ecstasy. "It's fine, Xiao Chen is fine, it's good that he's fine, it's good that he's fine." Seeing that Xiao Chen had returned safely, Xianyuan Ling did not care about his own situation at all. He only felt that the big stone in his heart was finally lifted. Compared to Xianyuan Ling's ecstasy, the reaction of the genius from the first realm was completely different. He slowly turned around, and when he saw Xiao Chen, he couldn't help but take a few steps back. At the same time, he looked as though he had seen a ghost. "You, Xiao Chen, it's impossible. How can you be here?" The genius was naturally afraid of Xiao Chen. At the same time, he was also puzzled as to why Xiao Chen, who had gone missing, would appear here. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen didn't seem to care about his fear. His blood-red eyes were filled with intense killing intent because Xiao Chen had heard what the genius had said just now. Mu Fan had not only imprisoned Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, Wine Daoist, and Luan Luan in the celestial prison, but he even wanted to silence them. It was hard to imagine what would have happened if he had arrived a little later. He reckoned that Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the other 3 would have been dead by now. After all, their cultivation bases were sealed, and they didn't have the strength to fight back at all. What a great way to cut the weeds and dig up the root. "So, you also know about this matter." Xiao Chen's eyes were overflowing with killing intent. He turned around and looked indifferently at the immortal venerable in his hand. Needless to say, This immortal venerable was none other than the expert who was in charge of guarding the entrance of the heavenly prison. However, he was completely frightened by Xiao Chen's question, so he stammered, "Sir, I'm not a heavenly venerable. I'm just following orders. It's not up to me to decide." From the previous exchange of blows, the immortal venerable knew that Xiao Chen's cultivation base was no longer at the immortal realm, but at the immortal venerable realm. Although he didn't know how Xiao Chen had broken through to the immortal venerable realm in just a few months, it was undeniable that Xiao Chen was completely different from before. It was no exaggeration to say that the current Xiao Chen had left the other heirs far behind. Life and death were all in Xiao Chen's hands. Naturally, the immortal venerable was terrified. However, Xiao Chen wasn't moved by his explanation. He tightened his grip on the immortal venerable's neck, and a blood-red light gathered in Xiao Chen's palm. "Following orders? In that case, you must have known about this matter. In that case, I haven't wronged you." Since Xiao Chen wanted to hurt the people around him, he naturally wouldn't show any mercy. However, just as Xiao Chen was about to kill the immortal venerable, a shout was heard from afar. "Xiao Chen, stop!" Along with the voice, Yi Xiao rushed over from the entrance of the celestial prison. However, Xiao Chen completely ignored his shout. Without any hesitation, Xiao Chen broke the immortal venerable's neck. At the same time, vigorous spiritual energy instantly entered the immortal venerable's body and killed him. His vitality was gone. He casually tossed the immortal venerable's corpse aside. At the same time, Yi Xiao quickly arrived in front of Xiao Chen. Yi Xiao wore a complicated expression as he watched Xiao Chen kill the immortal venerable without hesitation. As a matter of fact, Yi Xiao had already sensed that something was amiss when he arrived at the entrance of the celestial prison, because Xiao Chen had already killed 2 immortal venerables. Xiao Chen met Yi Xiao's eyes. At this moment, he no longer treated Yi Xiao as intimately as before. Instead, he treated Yi Xiao coldly as though they were strangers. Just like Yi Xiao and the other heirs of Kunlun, Xiao Chen no longer treated them as friends because of what they had done. Although he didn't resent them, the little bit of affection he had for them had indeed vanished into thin air. They were just strangers now. In the face of Xiao Chen's indifference, Yi Xiao remained silent for a moment. In the end, he sighed helplessly and said, "Xiao Chen, you're in big trouble." He had killed 2 immortal venerables and 1 immortal venerable in the Hachibara Senkai. This was indeed big trouble. However, Xiao Chen didn't take Yi Xiao's words to heart. Was this considered big trouble? This matter was far from over. He didn't have the slightest intention of paying attention to Yi Xiao. From the moment Yi Xiao chose to stand by and watch, Xiao Chen and him had nothing much to say. He turned around and walked directly to Xianyuan Ling. Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with gentleness. He said slowly, "Big brother, are you all right? It's a small matter. Let's deal with the matter at hand first. We'll talk about the rest later." Xianyuan Ling smiled. The matter at hand was not over yet. However, to Xiao Chen, this was not a problem. As long as Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the other 3 were fine, he could deal with the rest. He released Long Qing, Wine Taoist, and Luan Luan from the cell one by one. When she saw Xiao Chen, Luan Luan naturally rushed into Xiao Chen's arms and cried pitifully. "Daddy, why are you so late?" Luan Luan was scared to death. The little girl had indeed suffered a lot during this period. Hearing this, Xiao Chen patted Luan Luan's back affectionately. After comforting her in a soft voice, he handed Luan Luan to Hong Xiu. While Xiao Chen was busy comforting Luan Luan, the 5 first world geniuses wanted to take the opportunity to slip away. Unfortunately, before they could take a step, Xiao Chen had already spoken. "Did I agree to let you go?" These 5 people were sent by Mu Fan to kill Long Qing and the other 3. Even the almighty immortal venerable Xiao Chen was killed. How could Xiao Chen let these 5 people go? Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the 5 people's faces darkened. However, at this moment, Yi Xiao stepped forward and said, "Xiao Chen, this is Hachibara Senkai. You can't act recklessly here." Yi Xiao actually stepped forward to protect these 5 people. Of course, Yi Xiao's intention was not to protect these 5 people. Instead, he wanted to protect Xiao Chen. After all, this was Hachibara Senkai. If Xiao Chen killed these 5 people, things would not end well. All in all, Yi Xiao was doing this out of consideration for Xiao Chen. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1858. Yi Xiao was thinking for Xiao Chen. However, did Xiao Chen need Yi Xiao to do this? Perhaps Xiao Chen would have given Yi Xiao some face in the past. However, Xiao Chen no longer had any feelings for Yi Xiao. From the moment he stood by and did nothing to help Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling, he was destined to end up like this. Perhaps Yi Xiao had his own helplessness. Xiao Chen did not blame him or hate him. However, from now on, the two of them were destined to be strangers. Life was like this. Some people could accompany you for life, while others could only accompany you for part of the journey. Yi Xiao was obviously the latter. Xiao Chen looked at Yi Xiao indifferently and said calmly, "Get out of my way." He did not hate Yi Xiao and did not want to hurt him. However, Yi Xiao said with a complicated expression, "Xiao Chen, have you really thought it through? If you kill them again, there will be no turning back." He had already killed 2 Immortal Realm experts and 1 Immortal Prime. However, in Yi Xiao's opinion, given Xiao Chen's status, even if he would be punished, it would not be too severe. However, if Xiao Chen killed the 5 geniuses from the first realm, things would be completely different. Moreover, Mu Fan would definitely take the opportunity to make things difficult for him. In that case, even though Xiao Chen was the heir of the 7th realm, it would be difficult for him to escape punishment. Yi Xiao still wanted to persuade Xiao Chen. However, after hearing his words, Xiao Chen only replied indifferently, "Get out of my way." He gestured for Yi Xiao to get out of his way again. Upon hearing this, Yi Xiao hesitated for a moment and finally stepped aside helplessly. Yi Xiao did not insist on stopping Xiao Chen. Perhaps this was the difference between friends and brothers. Think about it. If Xianyuan Ling or Long Qing were to be replaced with Yi Xiao, the two of them would definitely not step aside. Friends could persuade you, but they would definitely not let themselves get involved. However, brothers were the ones who could persuade you and also jump into the pit with you. Yi Xiao stepped aside. At the same time, the 5 geniuses from the first realm faced Xiao Chen. Their leader looked terrified, but he still had to muster up his courage and speak. "Xiao Chen, this is the Hachibara Senkai. Only the Hachibara Senkai has rules. Even if there is a punishment, it should be decided by the realm lords. You can't kill us." The genius forced himself to remain calm. However, upon hearing this, Xiao Chen did not hesitate at all. 5 streaks of blood-red sword qi gathered around him and formed 5 streaks of sword radiance. Xiao Chen did not do anything, but the 5 streaks of sword radiance directly attacked the 5 geniuses. As Xiao Chen attacked, Yi Xiao was immediately stunned. Then, he said in disbelief, "The beginning of the Immortal Prime Realm." Previously, Yi Xiao had not noticed the change in Xiao Chen's cultivation level. However, now that Xiao Chen had taken the initiative to attack, he could clearly feel that Xiao Chen's cultivation level had broken through to the Immortal Prime Realm. In just a few months, Xiao Chen had stepped into the Immortal Prime Realm. On the other hand, Yi Xiao and the other heirs of Kunlun were still in the lesser perfection Immortal Realm. A look of disappointment flashed across Yi Xiao's eyes. How could he not understand that Xiao Chen had already given him enough face? Perhaps it was because of their old friendship. Otherwise, with Xiao Chen's current strength, Yi Xiao would not be able to stop him if he wanted to kill them. He instantly became somewhat disappointed. At the same time, Hong Xiu, who was standing beside Xiao Chen with Luan Luan in her arms, looked at Yi Xiao with a complicated expression. Just now, she was really afraid. She was afraid that Xiao Chen would attack Yi Xiao. Fortunately, Xiao Chen did not attack in the end. This did not make things too difficult for Hong Xiu. After all, they had grown up together. Hong Xiu and Yi Xiao still had a deep relationship. However, between Yi Xiao and Xiao Chen, Hong Xiu would definitely choose Xiao Chen without hesitation. There was no doubt about it. Without paying attention to Yi Xiao's change, 5 blood-red sword rays shot towards the 5 geniuses of the first realm. As expected, the 5 of them were killed on the spot. Xiao Chen had already broken through to the immortal prime realm. Just now, he did not hold back at all. He directly used the power of the sword realm. In this way, how could the 5 geniuses of the first realm resist him? Yi Xiao had easily killed 5 people. Yi Xiao sighed inwardly at this. Things had finally gotten out of hand and were out of hand. Had things gotten out of hand? Yi Xiao obviously did not realize that Xiao Chen's real purpose was not only this. Things were not over yet. After Xiao Chen killed the 5 geniuses, Xianyuan Ling, Long Qing, and Wine Taoist came to Xiao Chen at the same time and looked at Xiao Chen. Xianyuan Ling said calmly, "Third brother, what should we do next?" They had killed the 5 geniuses. No matter what, the 3 of them would definitely accompany Xiao Chen. Upon hearing Xianyuan Ling's words, Xiao Chen said flatly, "Of course we have to find the culprit. We have to remove the roots when we cut the grass." Mu Fan had tried to kill him again and again. This time, he had almost harmed Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the others. Xiao Chen did not have the patience to be entangled with him. This time, no matter what, Xiao Chen must kill this guy. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Wine Taoist's expression changed slightly. "You still want to kill Mu Fan? Mu Fan is an heir of Kunlun. So what? If I don't kill this person, I won't be at ease. As for the rest, let's talk about it later. At most I'll just leave," Xiao Chen said coldly. Mu Fan had to be killed. At most, he would leave the Hachibra Senkai. After all, after this incident, Xiao Chen was extremely disappointed with the Hachibra Senkai. Or rather, after this incident, Xiao Chen finally understood a principle. Living under someone else's roof, one would always have to look at their face. It was not easy for him to have a little bit of acknowledgement with the Hachibra Senkai. However, after this incident, this acknowledgement had disappeared. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Wine Taoist, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and Hongxiu's expressions changed slightly. Leaving the Hachibra Senkai was not a joke. Of course, it was not as if Xiao Chen did not have something to rely on to say such a thing. Naturally, it came from Junwei. Previously, Xiao Chen had always thought that Junwei was at most an almighty in the immortal emperor realm. However, this time, it only took him 2 hours to travel from the second wilderness to the first wilderness. Therefore, Xiao Chen guessed that Junwei was not an almighty in the immortal emperor realm. Instead, he was an existence that had surpassed the immortal emperor realm. With such a strong backing, Xiao Chen had the confidence to leave the Hachibra Senkai. At the same time, it was possible for him to kill Mu Fan. Otherwise, based on Xiao Chen's own strength, it would be impossible for him to kill Mu Fan under the protection of the Hachibra Senkai's experts. Xiao Chen was relying on Junwei. However, Xiao Chen did not know that Junwei's cultivation had not only surpassed the immortal emperor realm. In fact, it was far beyond the immortal emperor realm. The difference between Junwei's cultivation and the immortal emperor realm was like heaven and earth. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1859. Immortal emperors were nothing in front of Junwei. Of course, Xiao Chen did not know about this. However, Yi Zhao's face darkened when he heard Xiao Chen say that he wanted to leave the Hachibra Senkai. Then, he spoke in an unfriendly tone. Shao Chen, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Leaving the Hachibara Senkai is courting death. Yi Shao grew up in the Hachibara Senkai, so his loyalty to the Hachibara Senkai was unquestionable. Therefore, when he heard Shao Chen say that he wanted to leave the Hachibara Senkai, Yi Shao could not help but feel angry. At the same time, he was warning Shao Chen that it was impossible to leave the Hachibara Senkai because this was already crossing the bottom line of the Realm Lord. It was not only the Hachibara Senkai, but also any other force in the world. How could they come and go as they pleased? Think about it. When you enter a sect and the sect nurtures you, it is impossible for you to leave after you have completed your studies. Therefore, in Yi Zhao's opinion, Shao Chen was courting death by leaving the Hachibara Senkai. In the face of Yi Zhao's angry rebuke, Shao Chen only glanced at him indifferently and did not say anything. Then, he turned to Long Qing and the others and said, "Let's go to the first realm." Shao Chen completely ignored Yi Shao and led the four of them to the first realm. Along the way, Hong Xiu wanted to say something several times, but she held back in the end. However, when Shao Chen and the others were about to leave, Yi Shao pulled Hong Xiu back and said with a complicated expression, "Junior sister, if Shao Chen insists, you should draw a clear line with him as soon as possible. Now that you have the heavenly immortal mansion, even without Shao Chen, you don't have to fear Mu Fan." Why Yi Shao felt that Shao Chen was really crazy. He was simply challenging the bottom line of the Hachibara Senkai. He was courting death. Therefore, in Yi Zhao's opinion, Hong Xiu should not continue to follow Shao Chen. Otherwise, she might be implicated by Shao Chen. Unfortunately, after hearing Yi Zhao's words, Hong Xiu interrupted coldly before he could finish his sentence. "Shut up, Yi Shao. I will not leave Shao Chen. If Shao Chen really leaves the Hachibara Senkai, I will definitely follow him. Don't say anything else." Yi Shao was a little selfish. Or rather, Shao Chen's position in his heart was not important enough. As soon as Hong Xiu finished speaking, she did not wait for Yi Zhao's reply and immediately chased after Shao Chen. However, after taking 2 steps, Hong Xiu paused for a moment and said without turning her head, "Yi Shao, this time, all of you are wrong, including Mother. You should not have turned a blind eye to it." In Hong Xiu's opinion, this time, they were wrong. If Yi Shao, Luo Li, and Hong Lian had stood up for Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling, the outcome would not have been like this. Unfortunately, they cared too much about gains and losses. They felt that offending Mu Fan for the sake of Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the other 3 was not worth it. After saying that, Hong Xiu did not stay any longer. She immediately chased after Shao Chen, and the group left the celestial prison together. Shao Chen naturally saw Hong Xiu's and Yi Zhao's actions. However, Shao Chen did not say anything. Or rather, Shao Chen respected Hong Xiu's choice. He would not ask for anything just because he was the one who saved Hong Xiu. This was something that Shao Chen would definitely not do. Even if Hong Xiu chose to stay in Hachibara Senkai and not leave with him, Shao Chen would not say anything because it was her freedom. Of course, if Hong Xiu really chose to do so, after they rushed in, Shao Chen and she would probably be strangers. After catching up to Shao Chen, Hong Xiu was a little nervous and wanted to explain. "Shao Chen, she was afraid that Shao Chen would misunderstand her." But in this regard, Shao Chen smiled and said, "I understand your intentions." Shao Chen naturally understood Hong Xiu's intentions. Besides, Hong Xiu had also used her actions to show that she was willing to stay by Shao Chen's side forever. Seeing that Shao Chen didn't misunderstand her, Hong Xiu couldn't help but secretly heave a sigh of relief. At the same time, she revealed a smile on the corner of her mouth. Under Shao Chen's lead, the group prepared to leave the celestial prison. At the same time, Jun Wuya followed behind them unhurriedly. Let's put it this way. Ever since Shao Chen entered the first wilderness, Jun Wuya had been following behind Shao Chen. However, just like in the second wilderness, no one noticed Jun Wuya's presence. He simply stood there, but no one could see Jun Wuya. Even Luoli and the other sector lords couldn't sense Jun Wuya's aura at all. Jun Wuya naturally saw everything that Xiao Chen did as he followed Xiao Chen unhurriedly. When he heard that Xiao Chen would rather leave the Hachibra Senkai to kill Mu Fan, Jun Wuya said with an amused smile, "This little guy is treating me as his backer. But at least he's smart and not stubborn." Jun Wuya knew clearly that Xiao Chen's confidence was due to him. At the same time, Jun Wuya could also see that Xiao Chen might have guessed that his cultivation had surpassed the Immortal Emperor realm. Although he didn't know how strong Jun Wuya was, he was definitely stronger than the Immortal Emperor realm. It was precisely because of this that Xiao Chen dared to kill people so unscrupulously. Jun Wuya didn't dislike Xiao Chen's actions at all. On the contrary, he thought that Xiao Chen was a good kid who could be taught. It was important to know that using all the resources around one was not a bad thing. On the contrary, it was a good thing. On the contrary, those who didn't know how to use the resources around them and only knew how to charge forward blindly were the real idiots in Jun Wuya's eyes. Fortunately, Xiao Chen wasn't such a person. Jun Wuya's eyes were full of smiles as he followed Xiao Chen unhurriedly. He whispered to himself, "Let me see how you're going to wreak havoc in the heavenly palace." In fact, for Xiao Chen and even the entire Hachibra Senkai, Jun Wuya thought that it was just a small matter. But even so, it was still very interesting for Jun Wuya, especially since Xiao Chen was his only disciple. Although Jun Wuya didn't choose to be his disciple, it was fate. The master-disciple relationship between Jun Wuya and Xiao Chen was undeniable. In that case, Jun Wuya naturally had some expectations for his only disciple. After all, for so many years, Jun Wuya had never accepted a real disciple. Xiao Chen was the first and the only one. It couldn't be more normal for him to have expectations. They arrived at the entrance of the celestial prison. When Xiao Chen and the others walked out of the entrance, they saw that there were already many Hachibra Senkai experts gathered around them. Among them, there were more than 30 Immortal Emperor Realm elders. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1860. When Xiao Chen and his group walked out of the celestial prison, they were already surrounded by hundreds of experts from Hachibra Senkai. Upon seeing Xiao Chen and his group, an Immortal Emperor Elder from the First Realm immediately shouted, "Xiao Chen, do you know your crime?" "Crime? What crime have I committed?" Xiao Chen replied without any change in his expression upon hearing this. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, the elder's face darkened and he scolded coldly. "What crime? Xiao Chen, you have killed 2 Immortal Realm experts, an Immortal Venerable, and 5 young geniuses in a short period of time. Isn't that a crime?" "Ha ha! Good. What a good crime. But let me ask you, have you ever treated me, Xiao Chen, as a fellow disciple? During the trip to the Second Baron territory, it was I, Xiao Chen, who asked Guan Hong and the others to retreat in time while I stayed behind to fight with the many powerful cultivators from the 8 Baron territories. But what about you? After I went missing, you attacked the people around me. Is this what you call a fellow disciple? Since you have never regarded me as a fellow disciple, how can I kill my fellow disciple?" Xiao Chen said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner when faced with the first elder's rebuke. Hearing this, everyone present fell into silence. Indeed, after Xiao Chen went missing, Mu Fan had indeed gone overboard with the things he had done. However, they had chosen to turn a blind eye to it because everyone felt that Xiao Chen was dead for sure this time. To offend Mu Fan, who was in the limelight for the sake of 4 people, was obviously unwise. No one could answer Xiao Chen. However, at this moment, Mu Fan appeared in front of Xiao Chen and said coldly, "Humph! Xiao Chen, don't you know that your eldest brother and second sister are spies sent by the 8 Desolates? What's wrong with locking them up in the celestial prison?" Mu Fan had finally appeared. In fact, Mu Fan had already known that Xiao Chen had returned. He had only appeared now because he wanted to kill Xiao Chen in one fell swoop. Xiao Chen had openly killed so many people in the Hachibara Senkai. In Mu Fan's opinion, this was the best opportunity to get rid of him. As soon as his voice fell, the corners of Mu Fan's mouth curled into a sneer. Mu Fan felt that he would definitely be able to kill Xiao Chen this time. When Xiao Chen saw Mu Fan, his eyes were also bursting with endless killing intent. He sneered and said, "Don't worry, spy. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. In my opinion, you were probably the real spy in the Second Wilderness. You were the one who told the information to the 8 Desolates, and then you put us in danger." Xiao Chen had actually thought about the incident in the Second Desolate. No matter how he looked at it, Mu Fan was definitely the biggest suspect. Unfortunately, this was only Xiao Chen's suspicion and he didn't have any evidence. However, he wasn't afraid because if Xiao Chen wanted to kill Mu Fan, he didn't need any evidence. He just needed to rely on his strength. Xiao Chen didn't back down and counterattack. Hearing this, the killing intent in Mu Fan's eyes became even more intense. He immediately retorted, "Xiao Chen, you don't have to slander me. I don't want to waste my time with you. Let's not talk about other things. You can't deny that you killed your fellow disciples, right?" The incident in the Second Desolates was already unclear. Even if Mu Fan was the biggest suspect, so what? Who could provide evidence? Therefore, there was no point in getting entangled with the incident in the Second Desolate. On the other hand, Xiao Chen dared to kill his fellow disciples in the Hachibara Senkai. Moreover, there was more than one person. This matter could be said to be irrefutable. Xiao Chen had a glib tongue and he couldn't deny it. Therefore, Mu Fan wanted to kill him. Naturally, he knew what Mu Fan was thinking. Hearing this, Xiao Chen sneered. So what? He didn't want to defend himself from the start. If he killed them, then so be it. Moreover, these people deserved to be killed. Moreover, the matter wasn't over yet. Xiao Chen still wanted to kill more people, and that person was Mu Fan, who was standing in front of him. Mu Fan probably never thought that Xiao Chen would still want to kill him even after reaching such a state. Hearing that Xiao Chen didn't defend himself at all and admitted it, Mu Fan laughed coldly. "Since you admit it, then it's easy. Killing your fellow disciples, Xiao Chen, according to the sect rules, you should at least have your cultivation crippled and be expelled from the Hachibara Senkai." Xiao Chen and Mu Fan were confronting each other. At the same time, in the Great Hall of the First Realm, the Realm Lords of Luoli were gathered together. They were naturally discussing the matter of Xiao Chen. "I never thought that Xiao Chen would be able to return safely. Could it be that he wasn't captured by the 8 Desolations?" Yi Xian lightly said with a sigh. It was indeed unexpected that Xiao Chen would be able to return safely. However, hearing this, Qing Yun said in a low voice, "Returning is a good thing, but from the looks of it, Xiao Chen probably already has a crack in Hachibara Senkai. This is not easy to handle." Qing Yun's words were not false. With the current situation, anyone could tell that Xiao Chen already hated Hachibara Senkai. As a result, things would be difficult to handle. Yi Xian and Qing Yun spoke one after another. Hearing this, everyone fell into silence, especially Luo Li and Hong Lian. The two of them had complicated expressions on their faces. He wanted to protect Xiao Chen, but he had too many misgivings. Moreover, Xiao Chen was already hostile towards Hachibara Senkai. After protecting him, it was hard to guarantee that Xiao Chen wouldn't have second thoughts. This was not a good thing for Hachibara Senkai. All the realm lords were silent. In the end, it was Mu Tai who spoke. "I suggest that we follow the rules of the sect. After all, everyone understands Xiao Chen's situation. What do you all think?" Mu Tai's suggestion to follow the rules of the sect was undoubtedly to kill Xiao Chen. At the very least, he wanted to cripple Xiao Chen's cultivation. The reason why Mu Tai said this was because Xiao Chen already hated Hachibara Senkai, and since he was no longer on the same side as Hachibara Senkai, then he couldn't stay any longer. No matter how talented Xiao Chen was, even if Xiao Chen could refine the will of the heavenly way, he couldn't stay any longer. The Hachibara Senkai would always be ranked first in the hearts of the realm lords. This was certain. As for this matter, how could they say for sure whether the realm lords were right or wrong? Even if they took 10,000 steps back, even if the realm lords really left, even if Mu Fan was targeting Xiao Chen, so what? Could it be that you still expect the realm lords to apologize to Xiao Chen? This was obviously impossible. So, since I can't use it, I'll just destroy it. This was Mu Tai's idea. It was very simple, but very practical. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1861. Mu Tai said. Upon hearing this, Luo Li and Hong Lian had a strange look in their eyes. As for the other sector lords, after a short moment of silence, they nodded in agreement. I agree with Mu Tai. I agree too. The sector lords nodded in agreement. In fact, this was not a difficult decision. Previously, the sector lords felt that there was no hope for Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu. Hence, they shifted their focus to Mu Fan. As for Mu Fan's actions during this period of time, the sector lords had adopted a conniving attitude. Since it had already happened, regardless of whether it was right or wrong, and regardless of whether they regretted it or not, it was impossible to undo it. At least, Xiao Chen and Hachibara Senkai had definitely developed a misunderstanding. Since that was the case, they could only continue down this path to the end. None of the sector lords were indecisive people. Once they made their decision, they quickly reached a consensus. Other than Luo Li and Hong Xiu, the rest of the sector lords agreed with Mu Tai's suggestion. Xiao Chen was going to be severely punished. However, the sixth realm lord, Zhua Ting, slowly said, Xiao Chen can be severely punished. However, I feel that we can punish Hong Xiu slightly. Xiao Chen might not be able to stay alive, but Hong Xiu could be spared because of her identity and the fact that she had formed the heavenly immortal residence. After hearing Zhua Ting's words, Hong Lian's expression turned slightly better. Compared to Xiao Chen, Hong Lian was naturally more concerned about Hong Xiu. After hearing Zhua Ting's words, Hong Lian naturally did not have any objections. The sector lords had made their decision. At the same time, outside the celestial prison, Xiao Chen and Mu Fan were still facing each other without giving in. Mu Fan wanted to use this opportunity to kill Xiao Chen. However, Xiao Chen was also determined to kill Mu Fan. Neither of them gave in. However, the sector lords had not spoken yet. Hence, it was impossible for Mu Fan to use this opportunity to kill Xiao Chen. Without the approval of the heirs of Kunlun, it was obviously impossible for Mu Fan to convict Xiao Chen. The Hachibara Senkai experts present would also not listen to Mu Fan's order to kill Xiao Chen unless the sector lords ordered it. Just as the two of them were in a stalemate, just as everyone was curious about how the sector lords would deal with Xiao Chen, Mu Tai's indifferent voice suddenly came from the sky. Let's go. Xiao Chen, you wantonly killed your fellow disciples. Your crime is punishable by death. According to the rules of the sect, you should be executed immediately. However, on account of your previous contributions to the Hachibara Senkai, you will be spared. You will be crippled of your cultivation and expelled from the Hachibara Senkai. The result that everyone had been waiting for finally came. Following Mu Tai's words, everyone present had different expressions on their faces. A cold smile flashed across Mu Fan's face. Crippling of his cultivation and expelling him from the Hachibara Senkai. This way, it would be easy for Mu Fan to kill Xiao Chen. In the end, the sector lords chose to punish Xiao Chen severely. During the entire process, Luo Li did not say a word. Obviously, he had silently agreed. Luoli had saved Xiao Chen's life before. However, at that time, Xiao Chen was useful to the Hachibara Senkai, so Luoli had saved him. However, now, Xiao Chen had developed hatred for the Hachibara Senkai. As such, not only would he be useless to the Hachibara Senkai, but he would also become a dangerous existence. For the sake of the entire Hachibara Senkai, Luoli could only choose to give up on Xiao Chen. No matter what, in Luoli's heart, the Hachibara Senkai would always be the most important. It was his life's work. Even Luoli had chosen to give up on Xiao Chen. In the eyes of the crowd, Xiao Chen's fate was already sealed. Compared to the cold smile on Mu Fan's face, Yi Xiao, who was standing not far away from Xiao Chen, sighed helplessly. In his opinion, Xiao Chen was definitely going to die this time. Not only Yi Xiao, but Guan Hong, Fu Rui, Quan Feng, Qiu Ru, and Lu Xiao, who were not present, also had the same thought. Although they were not present, Mu Tai's words had clearly spread throughout the entire Hachibara Senkai. Everyone knew that the sector lords were going to punish Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen, let's see what you can do this time, Mu Fan said indifferently as he looked coldly at Xiao Chen. Soon, he shouted in a deep voice. Take him down, cripple his cultivation, and chase him out of the Hachibara Senkai. With so many Hachibara Senkai experts present, there was no need for the sector lords to act personally. Those immortal Emperor Realm elders were more than enough to take down Xiao Chen and cripple his cultivation. Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, Wine Daoist, and the others, who had been standing beside Xiao Chen, had a grim expression on their faces when they saw the outcome. They did not expect the sector lords to be so heartless. Everyone knew what Xiao Chen had done for the Hachibara Senkai. But this time, the sector lords did not care about their past relationship and directly crippled Xiao Chen's cultivation. Although they said that they would spare Xiao Chen's life, once Xiao Chen's cultivation was crippled, how long would he be able to live? Given Mu Fan's character, how could he let Xiao Chen continue to live? The sector lords must have thought of this, but they still made such a decision. Just because Xiao Chen had killed several Heaven's Prides from the First Realm? Their hearts were heavy. The current situation was almost certain death. However, Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, and Wine Daoist had no intention of backing down. Even if they were to die, they would not leave Xiao Chen behind, just like how Xiao Chen would never leave them behind. Compared to the tension and heaviness of the three, Xiao Chen was unusually calm after hearing the news. Although he had guessed that this might be the outcome, Xiao Chen couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart when he heard it. This was what it meant to be in a superior position. They could decide your life and death with a single word. In the eyes of the sector lords, what Xiao Chen had done in the past was not important. What they cared about was whether Xiao Chen could still be used by the Hachibara Senkai in the future. Now, the sector lords felt that Xiao Chen might not be useful to the Hachibara Senkai in the future, so they did not hesitate to destroy him. Hearing Mu Fan's words, Xiao Chen quickly laughed out loud and said, "Haha, good. What a good excuse to spare one's life. In that case, I don't have to worry about anything. From today onwards I, Xiao Chen, will withdraw from the Hachibara Senkai." Xiao Chen was bitterly disappointed in the Hachibara Senkai, but he did not want to do anything to the Hachibara Senkai. After all, if it wasn't for Luoli, Xiao Chen might have died long ago. It was undeniable that Luoli and the other sector lords were selfish, but it was not entirely correct to say that they were wrong. They were in a different position, so they naturally saw things from a different perspective. With the status of Luoli and the other sector lords, their decision was not wrong, because they were all thinking for the Hachibara Senkai. In front of the Hachibara Senkai, Xiao Chen's life and death was too insignificant. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 1862. Luoli and the other realm lords didn't do anything wrong. It was just that they had different standpoints. In Luoli and the other realm lords' hearts, Hachibra Senkai's interests were above everything, while in Xiao Chen's heart, the people around him were above everything. For the sake of Longqing, Xianyuan Ling and the others, Xiao Chen wouldn't care about the gains and losses of Hachibra Senkai. This was also the reason why Luoli and the other realm lords made such a decision. Hearing Xiao Chen's laughter, Mu Fan's eyes were overflowing with killing intent. You're still talking nonsense when you're about to die. Take him down. Along with Mu Fan's voice, the 4 immortal Emperor Realm Elders finally took action at the same time. Since the Realm Lords had already made their decision, they naturally wouldn't hesitate any longer. Moreover, these 4 immortal Emperor Realm Elders were also from the First World. The 4 of them took action at the same time, wanting to take down Xiao Chen in one fell swoop. Even though Xiao Chen had already broken through to the immortal Venerable Realm, it was still impossible for him to face 4 immortal Emperor Realm Elders at the same time. However, Xiao Chen didn't panic at all because Xiao Chen still had his own confidence. He didn't have the slightest intention to take action. He just stood there calmly. Seeing that Xiao Chen didn't move, the smile in Mu Fan's eyes deepened. Finally, he could finally kill Xiao Chen this time. He felt that Xiao Chen wouldn't be able to escape this time. Even if Xiao Chen had heaven-defying means, how could he contend against the entire Hachibra Senkai? Mu Fan sneered. However, just as the 4 immortal Emperor Realm Elders of the First World arrived in front of Xiao Chen and were about to take action, a terrifying force erupted out of nowhere. Immediately, the 4 of them were sent flying. The 4 immortal Emperor Elders were sent flying before they could even touch the corner of Xiao Chen's clothes. Mu Fan was stunned by the scene. Everyone present was stunned. How is this possible? Everyone could not help but think. At the same time, under everyone's gaze, Jun Wuya, who was dressed in rough gray linen, appeared in front of Xiao Chen out of thin air. An old man appeared out of nowhere. Looking at Jun Wuya, everyone's expression changed slightly, especially the elders of Immortal Emperor Realm. Jun Wuya, on the other hand, didn't seem to care about everyone's gazes. With a faint smile on his face, Jun Wuya turned to look at Xiao Chen and said, "Brat, you've just joined the sect and you're already using me as your shield?" "I don't have a choice," Xiao Chen replied without any change in his expression. Since Xiao Chen had guessed that Jun Wuya's strength had surpassed the Immortal Emperor Realm, how could he not use him? Moreover, although Jun Wuya said so, he didn't seem to blame Xiao Chen at all. In the face of Jun Wuya's sudden appearance, many Hachibra Senkai experts were stunned. Soon, the 4 immortal Emperor Realm Elders who attacked Xiao Chen earlier shouted angrily. "Who are you? How dare you trespass into our Hachibra Senkai? Haha! Is there any place in this world that I can't go?" Jun Wuya shouted loudly. Facing hundreds of Hachibra Senkai experts and dozens of Immortal Emperor Realm Elders, Jun Wuya didn't show the slightest fear. The 4 Immortal Emperor Realm Elders' faces darkened and anger surged in their hearts. Then, they launched an attack at Jun Wuya. The 4 of them attacked again, but the result was still the same. Jun Wuya didn't seem to have done anything, but the 4 of them were sent flying again. And this time, the 4 of them spat out mouthfuls of blood as they were sent flying. It was obvious that they were seriously injured. Jun Wuya didn't even make a move. Just his chi alone was enough to send the 4 Immortal Emperor Realm Elders flying. More importantly, none of the Hachibra Senkai experts present could see through Jun Wuya's cultivation base. In their eyes, Jun Wuya was like a bottomless pit. They couldn't see through him at all. The 4 Immortal Emperor Realm Elders couldn't even get close to Jun Wuya. Upon seeing this, the rest of the Hachibra Senkai experts couldn't hold themselves back any longer. Soon, they launched an attack at Jun Wuya. There were hundreds of Hachibra Senkai experts. The weakest among them was at the Immortal Realm. There were more than 100 Immortal Venerables and dozens of Immortal Emperor Realm Elders. Such a force was enough to start a decisive battle. But even so, Jun Wuya still didn't show any intention of taking action in the face of so many experts. His hands were placed behind his back. His expression didn't change at all. A terrifying force soared from Jun Wuya's body and spread in all directions. Under the impact of this force, all of the Hachibara Senkai experts were sent flying without any resistance. Everyone was thrown off their feet. Their chi and blood were in turmoil. With just one attack, Jun Wuya had severely injured hundreds of Hachibara Senkai experts at the same time. Such an outcome caused everyone to be incomparably shocked. How could this be possible? One must know that the people present were definitely not ordinary people. With such a lineup, perhaps even immortal emperors would be able to contend against them. Edited by Lifer, Fingerfox. However, they were still useless in front of Jun Wuya. They couldn't even get close to him. From the beginning until the end, Jun Wuya didn't even move, let alone attack. His aura alone was enough to severely injure many Hachibara Senkai experts. A look of shock appeared on their faces. Everyone was trying to guess who the old man who had suddenly appeared was. What level of cultivation had he reached? How could he be so powerful? Hundreds of people besieged him, but they couldn't even get close to him. How was this possible? Blood trickled from the corners of their mouths as they stared at Jun Wuya. However, they didn't dare to make any more moves. From the brief contact just now, they knew that they were no match for Jun Wuya. Moreover, if Jun Wuya wanted to kill them, none of them would be able to escape. They weren't the only ones who were shocked. Even Xiao Chen, who had already guessed Jun Wuya's strength, was shocked. Hundreds of people had been forced back by a wisp of aura. This was a true expert. After Jun Wuya effortlessly repelled the crowd's attack, an indifferent voice was heard. "Your Excellency, you have come to Hachibara Senkai. Don't you think it's a little too much for you to be so presumptuous?" This voice obviously came from one of the sector lords. Although it was indifferent, one could still hear a trace of seriousness in it. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote recommend it. Chapter 1863. Facing the encirclement of hundreds of Hachibara Senkai experts, Jun Wuya was easily able to heavily injure them. With such strength, it was no wonder that the realm lords were afraid. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Tai Yixian, Qing Yun, Yu Aochuan, Zhuoting, Luoli, Red Lotus, and the 8 realm lords all appeared. All of them looked at Jun Wuya with serious expressions. In front of Jun Wuya, Mu Tai and the other realm lords were unable to see through Jun Wuya's cultivation. It was as if he was an ordinary old man who didn't have any cultivation at all, but how could he be an ordinary person to be able to force back hundreds of experts with just a trace of his aura? Of course, if one observed carefully, it wouldn't be difficult to discover that in front of Jun Wuya, other than fear, the realm lords also had a trace of deeply hidden excitement and excitement. This was a bit strange. Why were the realm lords so excited when facing Jun Wuya? The reason was very simple. They had also guessed that Jun Wuya's cultivation had most likely already surpassed the immortal emperor realm. They had always guessed that there must be an even higher existence above the immortal emperor realm. This was also what the realm lords had always been pursuing. Now that they had finally met such a person, how could the realm lords not be excited? It was also because the time was not right. Otherwise, the realm lords would probably not be able to resist asking Jun Wuya for guidance. Of course, this kind of consultation was actually a waste of time, because Jun Wuya would never teach them anything. After sizing up Jun Wuya for a while, Mu Tai finally cupped his hands and bowed. "Senior, we are honored by your presence. Please forgive us for not going out to welcome you." After sizing Jun Wuya up, the various sector lords were certain that he was a true expert above the immortal emperor realm. Hence, Mu Tai's attitude became much more respectful. However, Jun Wuya was not interested in Mu Tai's respect at all. He chuckled softly and said, "There's no need for such meaningless formalities. This seat has no intention of teaching you anything. The only reason I'm here today is for this useless disciple of mine." As he spoke, Jun Wuya indifferently glanced at Xiao Chen beside him. Mu Tai and the other realm lords' faces darkened slightly, especially Luoli, whose eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Jun Wuya was actually Xiao Chen's disciple. In that case, wouldn't Xiao Chen have a master whose cultivation surpassed the immortal Emperor realm? What kind of great opportunity was this? The realm lords could not help but be envious. After confirming that Jun Wuya's cultivation base had definitely surpassed the immortal Emperor realm, the various world overlords instantly gave up on the thought of attacking. There was no helping it. From Jun Wuya's body, the various world overlords couldn't sense any aura at all. Everything was so calm. However, it was precisely this calmness on the surface that caused them to feel even more uncertain in their hearts. Moreover, from Jun Wuya's previous display of strength, his strength was indeed unfathomable. Once they fought, it was still unknown whether the Hachibra Senkai could be a match for Jun Wuya alone. One person could suppress an entire sect. This was the benefit of absolute strength. No matter how strong the Hachibra Senkai was, it was still nothing in front of Jun Wuya. Moreover, the decision of Mu Tai and the other realm lords was actually very correct. This was because Jun Wuya's cultivation had not only surpassed the immortal Emperor realm. In other words, the immortal Emperor realm was still thousands of miles away from Jun Wuya's level. Therefore, if they really fought, there was no doubt that the Hachibra Senkai would be defeated. Moreover, if Jun Wuya wanted to destroy the Hachibra Senkai, it would not be too difficult. Mu Tai's expression changed slightly as he looked at Xiao Chen. Very quickly, he regained his senses and said with a smile, "Xiao Chen is Senior's disciple?" "That's right. However, I heard that someone wanted to destroy my disciple's cultivation?" Upon hearing this, Jun Wuya smiled faintly. Destroy Xiao Chen's cultivation? Upon hearing Jun Wuya's words, Mu Tai and the others were stunned. Then they fell silent. Seeing this, Jun Wuya did not mind their silence. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and a terrifying aura shot out from his body. This was the first time that Jun Wuya had released his aura. Under this aura, all the Hachibra Senkai experts present, except for Mu Tai and the other realm lords, fell to their knees uncontrollably. It was as if their legs were being forced to bend by some unknown force. This was the first time everyone had felt such an aura. It was far beyond the immortal Emperor realm. Even Mu Tai and the other realm lords did not have the slightest intention to resist under such an aura. In the face of Jun Wuya's terrifying aura, the only thing everyone could do was to kneel down and worship him. Other than that, there was nothing else they could do. Originally, they still had a little bit of extravagant hope in their hearts. If they were to fight to the death, the Hachibra Senkai might not necessarily lose to Jun Wuya. However, at this moment, under the envelopment of this aura, Mu Tai and the other realm lords personally experienced how childish this little bit of extravagant hope in their hearts was. Undefeatable, absolutely undefeatable. Even if the entire Hachibra Senkai were to use all their strength, they would not be a match for this old man in front of them. Is this the power that surpasses the immortal Emperor realm? Mu Tai, Yixin, and Luoli all had this thought in their hearts. In the face of such power they were afraid, but also incomparably extravagant hope, because this was really what they had been pursuing all along. However, if they were to know that this aura was not even 1/10 of Jun Wuya's true strength, who knew what Luoli and the other realm lords would think? Jun Wuya took the initiative to reveal his aura in order to intimidate the Hachibra Senkai. Very soon, Jun Wuya withdrew his aura. Then, everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, except for Luoli and the other realm lords, the rest, including the immortal Emperor realm elders, were already drenched in cold sweat. Their backs had long been drenched in sweat. A trace of his aura was enough to cause such great pressure to everyone. The effect of intimidation had also been achieved. At this moment, seeing the obvious change in the eyes of Luoli and the other realm lords, Jun Wuya still said with a chuckle, "This seat has no interest in your Hachibra Senkai, so don't have any unnecessary thoughts." After saying that, without waiting for Mu Tai and the others to reply, Jun Wuya turned his head to look at Xiao Chen with a touch of gentleness in his eyes. "Go. With Master here, you can kill whoever you want. As for the others, Master will not let them touch a single finger." Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 1864. Knowing that Xiao Chen wanted to kill Mu Fan, Jun Wuya's gaze swept past Mu Tai and the other sector lords as he spoke. Facing Jun Wuya's gaze, Mu Tai and the others felt extremely helpless. Who would have thought that Xiao Chen would suddenly have such a terrifying master? His cultivation was so terrifying that the entire Hachibra Senkai couldn't do anything to him. Not only the people from Hachibra Senkai, even Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, and the Wine Taoist were pleasantly surprised. They also didn't know when Xiao Chen had a master like Jun Wuya. But no matter what, this was a good thing for them. Because of Jun Wuya's existence, the Hachibra Senkai couldn't do anything to them. And the previous crisis had been completely resolved with Jun Wuya's appearance. No one dared to refute Jun Wuya's words. Hearing this, Xiao Chen bowed to Jun Wuya and said, "Thank you, Master. Go." Hearing this, Jun Wuya nodded, indicating that Xiao Chen didn't need to say anything and just do it. With Jun Wuya's support, Xiao Chen naturally didn't have any scruples. He immediately looked at Mu Fan and slowly walked towards him. Facing Xiao Chen's gaze, Mu Fan's heart was burning with anger. Once again, Xiao Chen escaped from death. Not only that, where did Xiao Chen get such good luck to meet such a powerful master like Jun Wuya? His heart was filled with jealousy. Mu Fan even wondered why it wasn't him. Why didn't he meet Jun Wuya? Why did it have to be Xiao Chen? Could it be that he, Mu Fan, was inferior to Xiao Chen? If he, Mu Fan, had a master like Jun Wuya, he would also be willing to give up the Bulsh *T Hachibra Senkai's heir seat. Didn't he see how Jun Wuya suppressed the entire Hachibra Senkai by himself? He was jealous of Xiao Chen's luck and opportunity. He was even more jealous that Xiao Chen could meet such a powerful master like Jun Wuya. Facing Mu Fan's jealousy, the murderous intent in Xiao Chen's eyes continued to gather. He walked towards Jun Wuya step by step. At the same time, he said faintly, "Mu Fan, it's time for us to settle this once and for all." Previously, Xiao Chen also wanted to kill Mu Fan, but he didn't have the right opportunity. At the same time, Xiao Chen's cultivation was on par with Mu Fan's, so it wouldn't be easy for him to kill Mu Fan. However, it was different now. Xiao Chen's cultivation had broken through to the initial immortal venerable realm. Moreover, he possessed the bloodline power of the heaven-breaking sword sovereign. His strength was much stronger than Mu Fan's. On the other hand, Mu Fan's cultivation was still at the perfection immortal realm. As such, Xiao Chen had the confidence to kill Mu Fan. Moreover, with Jun Wuya in charge, who in the entire Hachibra Senkai could stop him? Therefore, this time, Xiao Chen wanted to kill Mu Fan in front of everyone in the Hachibra Senkai to settle this once and for all. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Mu Fan was extremely angry. However, there was nothing he could do. With Jun Wuya present, no one in the Hachibra Senkai dared to resist. Mu Fan's gaze unconsciously turned towards Jun Wuya. Sensing Mu Fan's gaze, Jun Wuya chuckled and said, "You don't have to look at me. I'm not interested in fighting with a baby like you. If you can defeat my good-for-nothing disciple, I naturally won't hurt you." As the heir of the first realm, Mu Fan had actually become a baby in Jun Wuya's words. However, Mu Fan was not displeased at all. On the contrary, he was secretly delighted. This was because Jun Wuya had said that he would not fight. In this way, as long as he could deal with Xiao Chen, Mu Fan would no longer have to be afraid. He did not even need to defeat Xiao Chen. As long as he could fight Xiao Chen and not lose, he would be fine. He only needed to deal with Xiao Chen. Mu Fan was still confident in this. After all, the two of them had fought before. Their combat power was on par. He did not dare to say that he could defeat Xiao Chen, but he was not afraid of fighting against Xiao Chen. Upon hearing Jun Wuya's words, Mu Fan's eyes flashed with determination. He looked at Xiao Chen and shouted coldly, "Xiao Chen, do you really think you can defeat me?" As he spoke, a soaring aura immediately spread out from Mu Fan's body. The bloodline of the three clans was also raised to the extreme at this moment. Speaking of Xiao Chen and Mu Fan, the two of them had fought many times. They had a certain understanding of each other's strength. Therefore, if it was just a battle with Xiao Chen, Mu Fan was not too afraid. However, when he saw that Mu Fan had taken the initiative to release his aura and was full of fighting spirit, Yi Xiao, who had been watching from the side, kept shaking his head. Mu Fan still thought that he could fight against Xiao Chen. However, he did not know that in just a few months, Xiao Chen had almost completed a qualitative change. On the other hand, although it was not that Mu Fan had not improved, compared to Xiao Chen, Mu Fan's improvement was almost equivalent to making no progress. Xiao Chen could not be mentioned in the same breath as before. It was ridiculous that Mu Fan still did not know that and still thought that he could fight against Xiao Chen. At most, they would be evenly matched and it would be difficult to determine the winner. Yi Xiao secretly felt pity for Mu Fan. At the same time, when Xiao Chen heard Mu Fan's words and sensed his powerful aura, his expression remained unchanged. The murderous intent in his eyes disappeared as he spoke indifferently. "Mu Fan, maybe you don't believe me, but this time, I'm really going to defeat you." As soon as he finished speaking, an aura that was far more powerful than Mu Fan's erupted from Xiao Chen's body. It seemed to have broken through the immortal venerable realm. When Mu Fan sensed the aura that erupted from Xiao Chen's body, his previously confident expression froze in an instant. Then, he shouted in disbelief. "Immortal venerable realm. Impossible! How did you break through to the immortal venerable realm in just a few months?" In just a few months, Xiao Chen's cultivation had broken through from the complete immortal realm to the initial immortal venerable realm. This was something that Mu Fan could not accept. It was simply a fantasy story. Whether it was Mu Fan or the other Hachibra Senkai powerhouses present, they were all stunned. Previously, Xiao Chen had not made a move, so everyone thought that Xiao Chen's cultivation was still at the immortal realm. But now, the aura that erupted from Xiao Chen was obviously at the immortal venerable realm. Their eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. However, Xiao Chen did not care about this at all. Since Xiao Chen dared to say that he was going to defeat Mu Fan, he naturally had his own reasons for doing so. With every step he took, Xiao Chen's aura became more terrifying. In the face of the approaching Xiao Chen, the confidence in Mu Fan's eyes had long disappeared. What replaced it was a look of deep fear and horror. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1865. Facing Xiao Chen, who was approaching him step by step, Mu Fan's expression became increasingly solemn. If both of them were at the same cultivation realm, Mu Fan naturally wouldn't be afraid of Xiao Chen. However, Xiao Chen had already broken through to the immortal reverent realm. There was a huge gap between their cultivation realms. Mu Fan didn't think that he was a match for Xiao Chen. Mu Fan didn't even dare to think about fighting someone of a higher cultivation realm. If they were at the same cultivation realm, it would be impossible for Mu Fan to defeat Xiao Chen, let alone when there was such a huge gap between their cultivation realms. Xiao Chen's expression became extremely solemn. However, he didn't give Mu Fan the slightest chance. His aura was raised to the maximum. At this time, Xiao Chen was less than 5 meters away from Mu Fan. Looking at the solemn expression on Mu Fan's face, Xiao Chen said faintly, "Mu Fan, you shouldn't have attacked the people around me when I'm not around. If you had done that, you might have been able to survive longer." Taking advantage of Xiao Chen's disappearance, Mu Fan's actions against Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling had completely crossed Xiao Chen's bottom line. Xiao Chen was a person who valued friendship very much. He valued the people around him even more. Moreover, after experiencing the incident with Qin Shuru and the other 2 women, Xiao Chen was even more concerned about the safety of the people around him. As for Mu Fan, he had taken advantage of Xiao Chen's disappearance to kill Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and the others. This had undoubtedly crossed Xiao Chen's bottom line. As soon as his voice fell, Xiao Chen didn't wait for Mu Fan to reply. He directly pointed his finger, and a blood-red sword light flashed past. He didn't give Mu Fan any chance to reply. In the face of Xiao Chen's attack, Mu Fan immediately blocked it. However, due to the gap between their cultivation realms, even though Mu Fan managed to block Xiao Chen's attack, anyone with discerning eyes could see that Mu Fan was obviously at a disadvantage. With the disparity in cultivation, it was indeed difficult for Mu Fan to be Xiao Chen's opponent. Furthermore, this was only the beginning. After Mu Fan successfully blocked his attack, Xiao Chen did not hold back. He immediately displayed the Sword Realm and took the initiative to attack Mu Fan without any hesitation. Xiao Chen's goal was very simple, and that was to kill Mu Fan. Naturally, he would not give Mu Fan the slightest chance to catch his breath. With the dustless sword in hand, the 2 of them were enveloped by the Sword Realm. In the face of Xiao Chen's attack, although Mu Fan had tried his best to block it, it was a pity that he was still struggling. In just a few months, Xiao Chen's strength had already made it difficult for Mu Fan to resist. The difference between the cultivation of the initial celestial prime realm and the small completion celestial realm was not small. After all, there was a huge gap between the 2 realms. He did not hold back and did not give Mu Fan the slightest chance. At the same time, the many powerful Hachibara Senkai present watched as Xiao Chen forced Mu Fan into a desperate situation step by step. No one dared to make a move. After all, besides Xiao Chen, there was still Jun Wuya watching from the side. Although Jun Wuya had no intention of intervening, he had previously said that no one was to interfere in the matter between Xiao Chen and Mu Fan. He had no interest in doing anything to the 8 Desolation Celestial World, but he could not tolerate anyone going against his wishes. Therefore, even though Mu Fan was losing ground, none of the top powers from the 8 Desolation Celestial World dared to help him. This included Luoli and the other realm lords. At the same time, they were also surprised by Xiao Chen's improvement. However, when they saw Jun Wuya, they quickly understood. With such a master, it was not strange. After all, Jun Wuya was an existence that had surpassed the Celestial Emperor realm. With Jun Wuya around, it was normal for Xiao Chen's cultivation to be able to break through so quickly. The fierce battle continued, and after a short half an hour, Mu Fan's situation had become precarious. In the hands of the current Xiao Chen, it was indeed difficult for Jun Wuya to put up much resistance. The injuries on Mu Fan's body were getting worse. If this continued, Mu Fan would definitely be killed by Xiao Chen. Mu Tai wanted to intervene and save him. After all, Mu Fan was the heir of the First Realm. Moreover, Mu Fan was very important to the Hachibara Senkai. If Mu Fan was killed by Xiao Chen, it would be a great loss to the Hachibara Senkai. Mu Tai couldn't bear to see Mu Fan being killed by Xiao Chen just like that. He already had the thought of intervening, but at this moment, just as Mu Tai was about to do so, Jun Wuya spoke up. You can try. Junwei seemed to be able to see through Mu Tai's thoughts. Upon hearing this, Mu Tai felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured from the sky. He quivered on the spot. Junwei was at the side. Did Mu Tai dare to intervene? Obviously not. Mu Tai's eyes flashed with a trace of helplessness. In the end, he resisted the urge to intervene. No one dared to intervene to save Mu Fan. At the same time, Mu Fan was finding it increasingly difficult to withstand Xiao Chen's attacks. At this moment, his injuries were extremely serious. He looked at Xiao Chen with a trace of fear in his eyes. As he resisted, Mu Fan opened his mouth to beg for mercy. Xiao Chen, you and I are both Hachibra Senkai's heirs after all. I will not provoke you in the future. Let's just forget about it. He knew very well that he was no match for Xiao Chen. Mu Fan opened his mouth to beg for mercy. At this point, seeing that none of the Hachibra Senkai experts present dared to intervene to save him, and that he was no match for Xiao Chen, Mu Fan opened his mouth to beg for mercy. However, in the face of Mu Fan's pleas, Xiao Chen had no intention of stopping. He did not stop his attacks at all. At the same time, he spoke coldly. To cut the grass, you have to dig up the roots. That's what you said. At this point, how could Xiao Chen let Mu Fan go? Xiao Chen would not do something like releasing a tiger back into the mountains. Although Mu Fan looked pitiful at this moment, Xiao Chen knew very well that he could not let such a person go. This was because once there was a chance, Mu Fan would definitely attack him. At that time, if Mu Fan gained the upper hand, would he let him go? This was a sinister person who would do anything to achieve his goals. Therefore, to Xiao Chen, killing Mu Fan was the best outcome. It was also the best way to get things done once and for all. Xiao Chen did not give Mu Fan any chance at all. Ignoring his pleas for mercy, Xiao Chen's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Finally, after a fierce battle, after severely injuring Mu Fan, Xiao Chen seized the opportunity and slashed out with the dustless sword in his hand. Mu Fan, who was already on the verge of death, could no longer resist Xiao Chen's sword. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the sword slashed across, and Mu Fan's head flew high into the air. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1866. Mu Fan's head flew into the air as the blade of the sword sliced through the air. Mu Fan, the first heir of the Kunlun realm, had been killed by Xiao Chen in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone could clearly see that Mu Fan's eyes had not closed even at the moment of his death. He had died with his eyes wide open. Perhaps even at the last moment, Mu Fan had never imagined that he would end up like this. As the heir of the Hachibra Senkai, he had actually been killed like this. No one spoke. Everyone had chosen to remain silent. After Xiao Chen had killed Mu Fan, he did not attack again. He slowly withdrew his aura, and the sword realm also slowly dissipated. Xiao Chen was indeed disappointed in the Hachibra Senkai. However, he did not hate them. After all, no matter what, he was indebted to Luoli. Xiao Chen would not bear a grudge against the Hachibra Senkai. He had killed Mu Fan because he deserved to die. It had nothing to do with the Hachibra Senkai. As for the indulgence of Luoli and the other realm lords, Xiao Chen knew what they were thinking. Even though he was disappointed, he did not hate them. After taking care of Mu Fan, Xiao Chen finally turned his gaze towards Luoli. Xiao Chen still respected Luoli. After all, no matter what, he had saved his life and protected him. Under everyone's gaze, Xiao Chen slowly walked towards Luoli. Luoli looked at Xiao Chen walking towards him slowly. Luoli's expression became extremely complicated. The two of them looked at each other. In the end, Luoli sighed helplessly and said, "I thought you wouldn't be able to come back." Even though there were thousands of excuses, in the end, Luoli only said one sentence. This sentence was indeed Luo Li's heartfelt words. All the realm lords had thought that Shao Chun had fallen into the hands of the 8 barren lands and would not be able to come back. It was because of this that Luo Li agreed with the other realm lords and allowed Shao Chun to attack Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, and the others. To put it bluntly, without Shao Chun, Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, and the others were obviously not as important as Mu Fan in the eyes of the realm lord. Hence, in the choice, the realm lords chose Mu Fan. Hearing this, Shao Chun replied plainly, "I understand." Indeed, he understood, but Shao Chun did not. Of course, this was because of the difference in status between the two sides. As the realm lords of Hachibra Senkai, Luo Li and the others naturally put the interests of the Hachibra Senkai first. If they had to choose between Mu Fan and Long Qing and Xian Yuanling, it was obvious that Mu Fan was more important to the Hachibra Senkai. Hence, in a situation where there was no way to reconcile the two sides, it was understandable that the realm lords chose Mu Fan. On the other hand, Shao Chun naturally put the safety of Long Qing and Xian Yuanling first. If he had to choose between the Hachibra Senkai and Long Qing and Xian Yuanling, Shao Chun would definitely choose the latter without hesitation. There was no doubt about this. Luo Li and the others cared about the interests of the Hachibra Senkai, while Shao Chun cared about the people around him. It was because of this that things had developed to this point. Was it wrong? Perhaps, but who could say for sure whether it was right or wrong? In the eyes of Luo Li and the others, perhaps Shao Chun was selfish. For the sake of Long Qing and Xian Yuanling, he did not care about the interests of the Hachibra Senkai. On the other hand, to Shao Chun, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling were his elder brother and second sister. The Hachibra Senkai actually thought that Mu Fan was more important, so they did not care about the lives of the two and even allowed Mu Fan to kill the two of them. Everyone had their own reasons, and from their own standpoints, they all felt that their choice was not wrong. Sometimes it was difficult to define right and wrong. Of course, Shao Chun did not have to fight for right and wrong at this time. Shao Chun had already done what he wanted to do by killing Mu Fan. As for the rest, Shao Chun did not have the intention to haggle over it. Shao Chun bowed deeply to Luo Li and said, "Sector Lord, Shao Chun has not forgotten the kindness of saving my life in the past, and will never forget it. Although Shao Chun has left the Hachibra Senkai today, Shao Chun will never bear a grudge against the Hachibra Senkai. As for saving my life, Shao Chun will definitely repay you in the future." Mu Fan, the main culprit, had already been killed by Shao Chun. As for the others in the Hachibra Senkai, Shao Chun would not bear a grudge against them, including Guan Hong and the other heirs of the Kunlun family. Shao Chun did not even hate Mu Tai. The reason why he had left the Hachibra Senkai was because it was not suitable for him to stay. If he forced himself to stay, it would not benefit anyone. Shao Chun remembered the kindness Luo Li had shown him. Although Shao Chun had done a lot for the Seventh Realm over the years, kindness was kindness. Shao Chun would not forget it, nor would he repay kindness with enmity. Hearing Shao Chun's words, Luo Li sighed silently. He knew that Shao Chun was telling the truth, because Luo Li could not see any hatred in Shao Chun's eyes. No one had expected things to turn out this way. However, Luo Li did not urge Shao Chun to stay, because he also knew that there was no point in forcing him to stay. The estrangement had already been created. If Shao Chun stayed in the Hachibra Senkai, it would not be good for Shao Chun or the Hachibra Senkai. Even though Luo Li knew that Shao Chun would not do anything to the Hachibra Senkai, what about the others? After this incident, would the others in the Hachibra Senkai truly accept Shao Chun? The answer was obvious. Thus, forcing Shao Chun to stay was meaningless. There was no benefit in doing so. Everyone had their own ambitions. Sometimes it was better to separate. Nodding slightly, Luo Li looked at Shao Chun and said softly, "Go. Even if you are no longer an heir of the Seventh Realm, you can still be a friend of the Seventh Realm." Hearing Luo Li's words, Xiao Chen bowed to Luo Li again. At the same time, Hong Xiu came to Hong Lian. Looking at her mother, Hong Xiu wanted to say something, but hesitated. She naturally wanted to leave with Xiao Chen. Hong Lian gently stroked Hong Xiu's hair when she saw her daughter's bashful look. A smile hung on her face as she said, "Silly girl, it's not like we're parting forever. Go if you want to go. Come back if you miss me." Hong Xiu thought that Hong Lian would be angry, but Hong Lian was not. In fact, this matter did not need to be so complicated. First of all, Xiao Chen and the Hachibara Senkai did not have an irreconcilable grudge. With Mu Fan's death, Xiao Chen's anger had completely dissipated. He had left the Hachibara Senkai only because it was not suitable. Xiao Chen did not hate the Hachibara Senkai, and neither did Luo Li. Thus, it was not impossible for Xiao Chen to return to the Hachibara Senkai in the future. As Luo Li had said, he was not an heir of the Seventh Realm, but he was still a friend of the Seventh Realm. As for Hong Xiu, if she wanted to follow Xiao Chen, it would not be a problem. Moreover, if Hong Xiu wanted to visit her mother in the Eighth Realm, she could do so at any time. No one would stop her. They were not enemies, so there was nothing to be sad about. Hearing her mother's words, Hong Xiu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she smiled at Hong Lian and said, "Yes, I will definitely come back often to visit mother. Please add vote recommend." Chapter 1867. Hong Lian's words made Hong Xiu smile through her tears. That's right, it's not like I won't be coming back. Furthermore, Xiao Chen and Hachibara Senkai weren't enemies. Following Mu Fan's death, the conflict between Xiao Chen and Hachibara Senkai had completely dissipated. Seeing the smile on Hong Xiu's face, Hong Lian also smiled and nodded. "Little girl, you've grown up. You have to be careful when you're outside. Take care of yourself." Hong Xiu was going to leave with Xiao Chen. Naturally, she wouldn't be coming back for a while. Since she was young, this was the first time Hong Xiu had truly left Hachibara Senkai. Without her mother's protection, Hong Lian would naturally be worried. Hearing her mother's words, Hong Xiu smiled and said coquettishly, "Mother, you're underestimating me. I'm not a child." Hong Xiu and Hong Lian smiled as they spoke. On the other side, Xiao Chen also cupped his hands and bowed to the other sector lords other than Luo Li. Facing Xiao Chen, other than Mu Tai, the other sector lords felt that it was a pity, but they all nodded slightly. It was a pity because Xiao Chen had left Hachibara Senkai. Anyone would feel that it was a pity for such a peerless genius to leave. However, at this point, the other sector lords also knew that Xiao Chen wouldn't stay. Furthermore, even if Xiao Chen was willing, it wouldn't be a good thing for Hachibara Senkai. However, among the sector lords, only Mu Tai's expression didn't look too good. This was understandable. After all, Xiao Chen had personally killed Mu Fan. As the first sector lord, it would be strange if Mu Tai's expression didn't look too good. However, Xiao Chen didn't care about this. He didn't hate Mu Tai either. After all, Mu Fan was already dead. What else could Mu Tai do? Could Mu Fan revive him? One had to know that Mu Fan didn't even have a trace of his soul left. After bidding farewell to the other sector lords, Xiao Chen and Hong Xiu finally came to Jun Wuya's side. They inadvertently saw Yi Xiao, who looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. Xiao Chen didn't say anything. Instead, Hong Xiu came to Yi Xiao's side and said with a smile, "It's already happened. However, Senior doesn't have to be like this. Xiao Chen won't hate you. We're still friends in the future." She knew that Yi Xiao was a little disappointed, so she comforted him. Xiao Chen indeed wouldn't hate Yi Xiao. However, there were some things that Hong Xiu didn't say. After this incident, although Xiao Chen wouldn't hate Yi Xiao, their relationship would probably stop at friends. Perhaps many years later, Xiao Chen could still drink and chat with Yi Xiao, including Guan Hong and the others. However, it was impossible for Xiao Chen to entrust his life to Yi Xiao and the others. He could be happy with you, drink with you, talk with you, be a brother, be a friend. However, only a brother could entrust his life to him, never leave him in life or in death. Yi Xiao wouldn't be Xiao Chen's brother. However, he could be a friend. It was that simple. Upon hearing Hong Xiu's words, Yi Xiao nodded slightly. Hong Xiu didn't say anything else and quickly returned to Xiao Chen's side. They were ready to leave. Of course, Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, Wine Daoist, and Luan Luan naturally left with Xiao Chen. Jun Wuya didn't have any objections to this. Before they left, Jun Wuya suddenly looked at Luo Li and the other realm lords and said, "You're all at the peak of the Immortal Emperor realm. However, I can tell you that you're using the wrong method if you want to break through to the Immortal Emperor realm. The power of the will of the Heavenly Way and the power of a cultivator run counter to each other. It's impossible to break through to the Immortal Emperor realm by refining the will of the Heavenly Way. You'll even harm yourself. Life is endless, death is indestructible, and reincarnation revolves to form a universe. Only then can you break through to the Immortal Emperor realm and achieve the Immortal realm," Jun Wuya said faintly. Without waiting for Luo Li and the other realm lords to reply, a wave of energy spread out from his body and enveloped Xiao Chen and the others. Then, he disappeared from the spot. Jun Wuya left, but his voice still lingered in the ears of Luo Li and the other realm lords. Jun Wuya's words were obviously to guide Luo Li and the others. He had pointed out the way for Luo Li and the others to break through. Although it wasn't a huge favor, Jun Wuya's guidance was undoubtedly what Luo Li and the others needed at this time. This was because Luo Li and the others had long reached the great circle of the Immortal Emperor realm. As for why they couldn't break through, it was because they didn't know how to break through to the great circle of the Immortal Emperor realm. Jun Wuya's words had pointed out the way for them. Now Luo Li and the others had a direction and the possibility of breaking through to the Immortal Emperor realm. Life is endless, death is indestructible, and reincarnation revolves to form a universe. After repeating Jun Wuya's words, Luo Li and the others had a look of enlightenment in their eyes. Jun Wuya's guidance was naturally for Xiao Chen's sake. It could be seen that Xiao Chen was very grateful to Luo Li. Since that was the case, as Xiao Chen's master, Jun Wuya should give Luo Li and the others some small favor. After all, it was just a matter of a few words for Jun Wuya. If it wasn't for Jun Wuya's guidance, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Luo Li and the others probably wouldn't be able to break through to the Immortal Emperor realm in this lifetime because their direction was wrong. A touch of ecstasy emerged in Luo Li's heart. Then, a smile appeared on his face. "I didn't expect that I would actually benefit from that kid." The kid Luo Li was talking about was naturally Xiao Chen. It wasn't difficult to guess. If it weren't for Xiao Chen, Jun Wuya would never have said this. After Xiao Chen and the others left, the crowd dispersed one after another. After returning to the seventh realm, Luo Li was in a very good mood. Seeing this, Li Qiu beside him said gloomily, "Realm Lord, Xiao Chen is gone. How can you still be happy?" Li Qiu was indeed a little depressed. After Xiao Chen left, the seventh realm had no heirs, but Luo Li was still smiling. Xiao Chen's departure was indeed a loss to the seventh realm, but Luo Li didn't care about it at all. Leaving may not be a bad thing. Xiao Chen has his own opportunity. Perhaps leaving the Hachibara Senkai is the beginning of his real rise. Besides, who said that there are no heirs in the seventh realm? With that, Luo Li smiled mysteriously. Seeing this, Li Qiu didn't react at first. After a while, Li Qiu came back to his senses and looked at Luo Li with a secret smile. "What do you mean, Realm Lord?" "Haha, it's good that you know. Although he has left, I believe that if the seventh realm needs him, he will come back because he is a very loyal person. Haha." With that, Luo Li didn't want to waste time talking nonsense with Li Qiu. He directly returned to his cave residence to cultivate in seclusion. Because of Jun Wuya's words, Luo Li had a lot of enlightenment. he needed to cultivate in seclusion. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1868. Luo Li had completely let go of Xiao Chen's departure. Although he felt that it was a pity at first, after thinking about it, perhaps this was the best choice for Xiao Chen. Of course, to the seventh realm, even though Xiao Chen's departure was a loss, it was definitely not too great. This was because Luo Li was very clear that even if Xiao Chen was no longer in the Hachibra Senkai and the seventh realm, if the seventh realm needed him one day, Xiao Chen would definitely not stand by and watch. This was enough. He was happy that Xiao Chen was able to meet a master like Jun Wuya. At the same time, Luo Li hurriedly went into seclusion because of Jun Wuya's advice. Like Luo Li, the rest of the sector lords also went into seclusion at this time. If there was one person who was angry about Xiao Chen's matter, it would probably be Mu Tai. After all, Xiao Chen had killed Mu Fan, which was indeed a big blow to the first realm. Unfortunately, even though Mu Tai was angry, what could he do? Not to mention Jun Wuya, even the other sector lords would probably not agree with him taking action against Xiao Chen. One had to know that Mu Fan was already dead. Just like the other sector lords, what could they do at this time even if they hated Xiao Chen? It would not benefit the Hachibra Senkai at all. Moreover, Mu Fan would not be revived because of this. On the contrary, in the eyes of the other sector lords, other than Mu Tai, the Hachibra Senkai should not hate Xiao Chen at this time. On the contrary, they should befriend Xiao Chen and use Luo Li's life-saving grace to tie Xiao Chen firmly to the Hachibra Senkai. This was the most beneficial way for the Hachibra Senkai. Everything was for the sake of benefit. Mu Tai also knew this because he had done this before. Therefore, Mu Tai was only secretly angry in his heart, but he did not think of finding trouble with Xiao Chen. In the Hachibra Senkai, everything that the sector lords did was for the sake of benefit. This was true, but for Xiao Chen, this was precisely what he did not like. Everything was for the sake of benefit. This was naturally beneficial for the development of a sect. However, on the contrary, it would indeed cause the sect to lose a lot of human feelings. As for Xiao Chen, he personally did not like such an atmosphere. The sector lords all chose to go into seclusion. The news of Xiao Chen killing Mu Fan quickly spread throughout the Hachibra Senkai. People like Guan Hong, Fu Rui, Quan Feng, and the others who were once on good terms with Xiao Chen, could only sigh silently after knowing the outcome of the matter. Xiao Chen did not know about the Hachibra Senkai. At this time, Xiao Chen and the others had already been brought back to the shattered continent of the Second Wilderness by Jun Wuya. The environment was incomparably beautiful, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was extremely dense. When Long Qing and the others first arrived, they were shocked by the spiritual energy. It was much denser than the Hachibra Senkai. Looking at the scene in front of them, who would have thought that this continent was actually a fragment left behind after the Second Wilderness was destroyed? It was just that it was slightly bigger. Even Xiao Chen did not know what methods Jun Wuya used to cause such a drastic change in this continent. However, in the face of the shock of Long Qing and the others, Jun Wuya did not pay much attention to them. Instead, Jun Wuya was very attentive towards Luan Luan. He simply treated Luan Luan as his own biological granddaughter. He treated Luan Luan even better than his disciple, Xiao Chen. In this regard, Xiao Chen was helpless, but he was not jealous at all. After all, Luan Luan was his daughter. As a father, Xiao Chen was happy that Jun Wuya treated her well. Moreover, although Jun Wuya was extremely gentle towards Luan Luan preferred to stick to Xiao Chen. In Luan Luan's heart, Xiao Chen was the one she needed the most, and the one she relied on the most was Xiao Chen. Seeing Luan Luan sticking to Xiao Chen, Jun Wuya was secretly amused. However, he still said to Xiao Chen inexplicably, "Chener, I am envious of your opportunity. This little girl is not bad. You must treat her well." Jun Huya seemed to know something, but he did not want to tell Xiao Chen. No matter how Xiao Chen asked, Jun Huya did not say anything. In this regard, Xiao Chen was helpless, but there was nothing he could do about it. The worries in his heart were gone. Long Qing, Xian Yuanling, Wine Daoist, Luan Luan and the others were also brought to his side. In this way, Xiao Chen began to cultivate with Jun Huya with peace of mind. 5 days passed. Under the guidance of Jun Huya, Xiao Chen's days were very fulfilling. Of course, it was also very tiring. Perhaps no one would believe it, but under the guidance of Jun Huya, Xiao Chen, who had already reached the immortal venerable realm, would be as tired as a dead dog at the end of every day's cultivation. He felt that his previous cultivation was already hard enough, but now Xiao Chen knew that compared to Jun Huya, his previous cultivation was no different from a vacation. Seeing that Xiao Chen was busy cultivating every day, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling also found Jun Huya on this day. In fact, the two of them had been thinking a lot these days. Seeing that Xiao Chen was getting stronger day by day, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling did not want to drag Xiao Chen down. They still wanted to fight side by side with Xiao Chen in the future. They were unwilling to watch Xiao Chen widen the gap between them step by step. Therefore, after struggling for a while, the two of them also made up their minds to worship Jun Huya as their master. After all, Jun Huya's strength was obvious to all. With his guidance, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling naturally had nothing to lose. Of course, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling had such thoughts not because of jealousy, but because they wanted to be by Xiao Chen's side all the time. The three siblings could always stand side by side and face everything together. That was all. Unfortunately, their thoughts were destined to fail. Because just as the two of them came to Jun Huya and bowed, before they could speak, Jun Huya had already said faintly, "Say no more. This king will not accept you as my disciples." Jun Huya directly interrupted them. To be honest, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling were indeed talented, but in Jun Huya's opinion, they were still far from being his disciples. Compared to Xiao Chen, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling were indeed inferior. Moreover, Xiao Chen currently possessed the heaven-breaking sword sovereign's bloodline power. As a result, the gap between the two of them was even greater. Talents like Long Qing and Xian Yuanling could only be considered to be superior in the Great Thousand World. They were not rare, but they were not truly at the top. As for Xiao Chen, before he had integrated the heaven-breaking sword sovereign's bloodline power, his talent was considered to be at the top in the Great Thousand World. Now that he had improved even further, in addition to the heaven-breaking sword sovereign's request, Jun Huya accepted Xiao Chen as his disciple. With Long Qing and Xian Yuanling's talents, it was impossible for them to become Jun Huya's disciples. When they heard this, a look of disappointment flashed across their eyes. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1869. To put it bluntly, talents like Xian Yuanling and Long Qing could not be found everywhere in the Great Thousand World, but they were definitely not rare. Therefore, Jun Huya did not think highly of them. If Long Qing and Xian Yuanling could become Jun Huya's disciples, then Jun Huya would not only have Xiao Chen as his disciple until now. With Jun Huya's status, there were many people like Long Qing and Xian Yuanling in the Great Thousand World. Moreover, as long as Jun Huya said a word, these people would definitely rush like a flock of ducks. After being rejected by Jun Huya, Long Qing and Xian Yuanling both looked disappointed. However, since they had already said so, the two of them naturally could not ask for anything else. Moreover, with Jun Huya's character, especially if you pestered him, you would definitely be able to become his disciple. After bowing to Jun Huya in disappointment, Xian Yuanling and Long Qing both said in unison, "Sorry to disturb you, senior. We will take our leave now." Since he did not think highly of them, it was useless to say anything more. After saying that, the two of them turned around and prepared to leave. However, the two of them did not expect Jun Wuya to sigh helplessly at this moment. Forget it. Although the two of you are not talented, you are also extraordinary. One of you has recultivated for 2 lifetimes, and the other has the purest dragon clan bloodline. Both of you are not bad. Jun Wuya suddenly opened his mouth and exposed the two's secret. Long Qing's dragon clan bloodline was actually not difficult to see. However, Xianyuan Ling had reincarnated for 2 lifetimes, and this point was actually seen through by Jun Wuya. Although they did not know what Jun Wuya meant by this, Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling still stopped in their track. At the same time, the storage ring in Jun Wuya's hand flashed, and a green ball of light appeared in front of him, suspended in midair. Seeing this green ball of light, Long Qing was stunned because from this ball of light, Long Qing felt a tremor from the depths of his bloodline. It was able to make Long Qing, who was a pure-blooded dragon clan, tremble. Moreover, from this ball of light, Long Qing also felt an extremely familiar and intimate aura. At first, Long Qing did not react to it. However, very quickly, he was certain that this green ball of light was the Dragon Clan's bloodline power. However, this bloodline power was so strong that Long Qing had never seen it before. Even from the ancestors of the Dragon Clan, Long Qing had never felt such a pure and powerful bloodline power. It was also the bloodline power of the Dragon Clan, but the bloodline power in this green ball of light was extremely terrifying. It was simply the difference between the bloodline power of the ordinary Dragon Clan and the bloodline power of the Dragon Clan. Although he did not understand why Jun Wuya suddenly took out this green ball of light, in the face of the stunned Long Qing, Jun Wuya quickly opened his mouth and said, "This is the bloodline power of an ancestral dragon. I obtained it by chance, but it is useless to me. Little girl, as a pure-blooded dragon clan, if you can refine this ancestral dragon's bloodline power, your talent should be greatly improved. Consider it an opportunity for you." As he spoke, Jun Wuya stretched out his hand and gently pushed, and the green ball of light slowly flew in front of Long Qing. Looking at the green ball of light in front of him, Long Qing's eyes could not help but flash with a look of ecstasy. Long Qing had never heard of the ancestral dragon, but this was normal. After all, the ancestral dragon did not exist in the 8 Desolates world. As the name implied, the ancestral dragon was the ancestor of all the Dragon Clan and possessed the most powerful strength in the Dragon Clan. As for the Dragon Clan, like the Hachibra Senkai, they were the descendants of the ancestral dragon. Compared to the ancestral dragon, the bloodline power was diluted by many times. In the Great Thousand World, the ancestral dragon was an extremely rare existence. In Jun Wuya's impression, there were only 3 ancestral dragons. The one that was still alive today was the current Dragon Clan leader of the Great Thousand World. He was very powerful and in the entire Great Thousand World, he was one of the top 10 powerhouses. Of course, compared to Jun Wuya and the Heaven-Breaking Sword Sovereign, he was still slightly inferior. However, no matter what, the ancestral dragon deserved a beating. Everyone knew this, and no one would underestimate the ancestral dragon, including Jun Wuya and the Heaven-Breaking Sword Sovereign. This ball of ancestral dragon's bloodline power had been with Jun Wuya for a long time. In the past, the Dragon Clan leader of the Great Thousand World had asked Jun Wuya for this ball of ancestral dragon's bloodline power more than once, even at any cost. Unfortunately, Jun Wuya did not get along with the old dragon, so he never agreed. In addition, Jun Wuya was the top powerhouse in the Great Thousand World. Even though the old dragon was powerful and dissatisfied, there was nothing it could do. It was such a precious treasure that everyone in the Great Thousand World coveted it. However, Jun Wuya had given it to Long Qing. If the people in the Great Thousand World knew about this, they would probably explode in an instant, especially the old dragon. It would probably vomit blood in anger. It was willing to pay a huge price in exchange for this ball of ancestral dragon's bloodline power from Junwuya, but it was rejected by Junwuya every time. Now, Junwuya had given this ball of ancestral dragon's bloodline power to a junior like Long Qing without hesitation. How could the old dragon accept this? Junwuya had given away such a precious treasure just like that, without any hesitation or reluctance throughout the entire process. In fact, this was Junwuya's character. No matter how good a treasure was, it was useless to him anyway, so there was no point in keeping it. Moreover, Junwuya had seen many peerless treasures in his life. Nowadays, there were very few things that could make Junwuya value them. However, Junwuya was a little surprised by Luan Luan. He did not expect to meet her here. Of course, Luan Luan was not a treasure, but she was the most precious existence in this world. Looking at the ball of green light in front of her, Long Qing was stunned on the spot. Her instinct told her that as long as she could refine this ball of ancestral dragon's bloodline power, she would definitely be able to complete a qualitative transformation. This was definitely a great opportunity for her, a great opportunity that even the power of living beings could not compare to. Long Qing stared blankly at Junwuya. Until now, she still felt like she was in a dream. In the face of Long Qing's daze, Junwuya smiled and said, "Take it. Take it. This thing is nothing more than a decoration in my place. It will be of great use to you." The complete ancestral dragon's bloodline power was just a decoration in Junwuya's eyes. Hearing this, Long Qing bowed respectfully to Junwuya and said sincerely, "Thank you, senior." Junwuya refused to accept her as a disciple, but he gave her such a great opportunity. Long Qing was really grateful to Junwuya. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 1870. Junwuya accepted Long Qing's respectful greeting. After all, he had given the complete ancestral dragon bloodline to Long Qing and Junwuya deserved it. However, Xianyuan Ling sighed helplessly while feeling happy for Long Qing when he saw that Junwuya had given such a huge opportunity to Long Qing. In Xianyuan Ling's opinion, it was indeed a joyous occasion for Long Qing to receive such a huge opportunity. However, Xiao Chun and Long Qing both had their own opportunities, and as their elder brother, it wasn't because of jealousy, but purely because he didn't want his sister-in-law to widen the gap between them. Xianyuan Ling was also a very strong-willed person. But what could he do? Perhaps Junwuya didn't have an opportunity that was suitable for him. Besides, a heaven-defying treasure like the ancestral dragon bloodline was something that could only be encountered by chance. Xianyuan Ling didn't say much, but his heart was filled with bitterness. Upon seeing this, Junwuya chuckled again. "Kid, there's no need to sigh over there. Why would I favor one over the other? Since I've given you, the second sister, an opportunity, you should have a share too," Junwuya said and retrieved a technique relaying jade from his storage ring. However, the grade of this technique, relaying jade, was much higher than the ones in the Eight Wastelands world. Without wasting any time, Junwuya pushed the technique relaying jade to Xianyuan Ling and said plainly, "You're lucky. Brat, your luck is pretty good. This cultivation technique is just right for you. Today, this old man has finally found a successor for this cultivation technique." Junwuya didn't know what kind of technique relaying jade was recorded in it, but shortly after, he arrived at Xianyuan Ling's side. This technique, relaying jade, was created by the Reincarnation Emperor. In the Great Thousand World, the Reincarnation Emperor was one of the top few. Although he wasn't as strong as Junwuya and the heaven-breaking sword sovereign, he was on par with the old dragon of the dragon race. The Reincarnation Emperor cultivated the path of reincarnation. As such, the technique relaying jade that he created could only be cultivated by someone who had mastered reincarnation. The most crucial condition was that the person had to be a reincarnated cultivator. However, it wasn't easy to find such a person because there were too many uncertainties in reincarnation. There could be an accident and one could die. Therefore, many people weren't willing to touch with reincarnation because it wasn't necessary. People like Xianyuan Ling, who had reincarnated and recultivated because of a coincidence, were rare even in the great wide world. However, there were definitely not many of them. It was precisely because there were so few people who were reincarnated that the reincarnation emperor's inheritance hadn't found a suitable successor to cultivate it. As an inheritance that comprehended the path of reincarnation, talent was secondary if one wanted to cultivate the reincarnation emperor's inheritance. However, the prerequisite was that one had to be a reincarnated cultivator. Xianyuan Ling met this requirement. In terms of talent, Xianyuan Ling might not be the top in the Great Thousand World, but he was a reincarnated cultivator and met the reincarnation emperor's requirements. Xianyuan Ling was shocked and overjoyed when he heard that it was an emperor's inheritance. However, upon seeing this, Jun Huia said indifferently, "This reincarnation emperor's inheritance belongs to me. This is the reincarnation emperor's inheritance. As for how to cultivate it, I don't know much. After all, our paths are different. The guidance I can give you is very one-sided. As for whether you can cultivate it successfully, it will depend on yourself." Upon hearing Jun Huia's words, Xianyuan Ling bowed respectfully, just like Long Qing did. In response, Jun Huia just said indifferently, "Go." Jun Huia didn't accept Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling as disciples, but he did give them a heaven-defying opportunity. Such an opportunity was enough to make countless people jealous, not to mention in the Eight Wastelands world. It could be said that this was a step for Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing. Of course, as for the final result, it would depend on their own abilities and luck. Jun Huia obviously couldn't put too much experience on the two of them. In these 10 years, Jun Huia only needed to do one thing, and that was to train Xiao Chen with all his strength. Therefore, Jun Huia obviously put more experience on Xiao Chen, because Xiao Chen was Jun Huia's real disciple. Moreover, to be honest, even though Jun Huia gave them such a heaven-defying opportunity, they were still a little lacking compared to Xiao Chen. There was no doubt about this. However, Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing didn't care at all. It was enough to have such a heaven-defying opportunity. Moreover, as long as they could stay by Xiao Chen's side and have enough strength to face everything with Xiao Chen, they would achieve their original intention. As for who among the three brothers was stronger, it was actually not too important in their hearts. Even if Xiao Chen was a safflower, and they were just green leaves that could only serve to set off the safflower, the two of them had no regrets. After all, even green leaves needed to have strength to set off the safflower. Have you ever seen a weed that could set off a safflower? The two of them bowed respectfully, and then strode away. Looking at their backs, Jun Huia smiled helplessly, and said to the room behind him without looking back, "Are you satisfied, little brat?" Hearing Jun Huia's words, the door opened, and Xiao Chen walked out with a smile on his face. He looked at Jun Huia, smiled, and bowed. "Thank you, master." Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing didn't know that the reason why Jun Huia gave them such a great opportunity was not only because of the two of them, but also because of Xiao Chen. Knowing Jun Huia's strength, Xiao Chen had also probed Jun Huia in the past few days, and knew that Jun Huia didn't want to accept the two of them as disciples. Since Jun Huia didn't want to accept disciples, Xiao Chen naturally couldn't force it. However, Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing were his elder brother and second sister, and Xiao Chen naturally couldn't forget them. They were brothers, and they should enjoy blessings and endure hardships together. Since he had become Jun Huia's disciple, Xiao Chen naturally had to seek some benefits for the two of them. Therefore, under Xiao Chen's coaxing and pestering, today's scene happened. In this regard, Jun Huia was quite helpless. Looking at Xiao Chen's smiling face, Jun Huia scolded in annoyance, You 3 siblings, Master really wants to see what kind of trouble you can cause when you go to the Great Thousand World one day. Well, now that I've done what you asked, go and cultivate. Don't give me any more excuses or I'll kill you. Please collect, please vote, please recommend me. Chapter 1871. Jun Huia scolded angrily. Hearing this, Xiao Chen also responded respectfully. In fact, Jun Huia really treated Xiao Chen as his disciple. As for Xiao Chen's requests, Jun Huia would almost always grant them, just like how he treated Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing. Jun Huia gave such precious treasures to Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing without batting an eyelid. He believed that with the Samsara Emperor and the ancestral dragon bloodline, Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing would definitely make a qualitative leap. The matter of Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing was perfectly resolved. However, Xiao Chen actually still had one thing on his mind, which was to resurrect Qin Shuru and the others. However, Jun Huia told Xiao Chen that he still needed to wait for a while. It was absolutely easy to resurrect a person. Even Jun Huia found it difficult to do so. However, Jun Huia clearly told Xiao Chen that it was originally impossible to resurrect Qin Shuru and the others. However, with Luan Luan it would be different. According to Jun Huia, Luan Luan was the key to resurrecting Qin Shuru and the others. Although Xiao Chen did not understand Jun Huia's meaning, Xiao Chen did not doubt Jun Huia's words. In the following time, Xiao Chen began to cultivate according to Jun Huia's guidance. It was very difficult, but his progress was obvious to all, especially in the comprehension of the sword body. With Jun Huia's guidance, Xiao Chen could make rapid progress. Of course, in addition to the cultivation of the sword body, Jun Huia would also teach Xiao Chen other cultivation knowledge, such as the power of law, the improvement of cultivation, and so on. He devoted all his attention to Xiao Chen. However, at the same time, Jun Huia also became very good drinking buddies with Wine Taoist in his free time. That's right, the Wine Taoist was addicted to wine, and Jun Huia was also an alcoholic. When they had nothing to do, the two of them would often get together to drink. Moreover, the Wine Taoist had prepared a lot of good wine. Although these wines were completely worthless in Jun Huia's eyes, they tasted very good. It was a good choice to satisfy his appetite for good food. It was also because of the drinking that Jun Huia and Wine Taoist's relationship became very close. At the same time, Jun Huia also gave Wine Taoist a great opportunity, which was to condense a new heavenly immortals mansion for Wine Taoist. When Wine Taoist broke through to the immortal state, he condensed the Earth Immortals Mansion because he did not have the power of living beings. Originally, it was impossible for Wine Taoist to condense the Heavenly Immortals Mansion after condensing the Earth Immortals Mansion. However, such a thing was not difficult for Jun Huia. Moreover, although the power of living beings was precious in the Eight Wastelands world, it was different in the Great Thousand world. Although it could not be said that it could be seen everywhere, its quantity was much more than in the Eight Wastelands world. In particular, with Jun Huia's identity and status, the power of living beings was nothing to him. Jun Huia had no less than 10 power of living beings. In Jun Huia's eyes, the power of living beings was not too precious. In addition, Jun Huia liked Wine Taoist very much. Therefore, Jun Huia took the initiative to condense a new Heavenly Immortals Mansion for Wine Taoist. After all, this was not difficult for Jun Huia. With Jun Huia's help, Wine Taoist naturally had no problem condensing a new Heavenly Immortals Mansion. He successfully condensed the Heavenly Immortals Mansion. The difference between a Heavenly Immortals Mansion and an Earth Immortals Mansion was obvious. In the Great Thousand world, under normal circumstances, only rogue cultivators would condense an Earth Immortals Mansion. Some disciples of large sects would condense a Heavenly Immortals Mansion. It could be said that he had given the Wine Taoist a decent opportunity, and the wine Taoist was grateful for that. On this unknown continent, everyone was living peacefully. Every day they would spend their time cultivating. Under such a peaceful and fulfilling life, their cultivation base improved rapidly. Xiao Chen's improvement was the greatest. With Jun Wuya's personal guidance, Xiao Chen's improvement was the greatest. Even Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling's strength had undergone tremendous changes after obtaining the ancestral dragon's bloodline and the inheritance of Samsara Emperor. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. In these 5 years, Xiao Chen's cultivation base had risen from the initial immortal venerable realm to the complete immortal venerable realm. No one would believe that he had broken through 3 minor realms in 5 years. However, with Jun Wuya's help, this speed was considered slow. In these 5 years, Jun Wuya had spared no effort in cultivating Xiao Chen. Jun Wuya had given Xiao Chen a lot of pills and treasures that could only be found in the Great Thousand World. With the help of such treasures, it was naturally not difficult for Xiao Chen to break through. Moreover, if it wasn't for Jun Wuya slowing down the speed of Xiao Chen's breakthrough, it was estimated that Xiao Chen's cultivation base would be much higher than this. One's cultivation base could not be ignored, but it could not be rushed. Therefore, Jun Wuya prioritized stability over Xiao Chen's cultivation base. He did not want Xiao Chen's foundation to be damaged because of rapid breakthroughs. In this regard, Xiao Chen agreed very much. Moreover, compared to cultivation base, Xiao Chen's combat strength had improved the most. Previously, Xiao Chen had always thought that his combat strength had reached its limit under the same realm. However, under the guidance of Jun Wuya, Xiao Chen discovered that there was still a lot of room for improvement in his combat strength. According to Jun Wuya, Xiao Chen's combat strength was only at the level of an ordinary heaven's pride in the Great Thousand World. He was not at the top. In other words, in the Great Thousand World, there were many people who could defeat Xiao Chen in the same realm. Of course, this was 5 years ago. After 5 years of cultivation, Xiao Chen's combat strength had improved tremendously. Now, he had successfully stepped into the top level of the Great Thousand World. Xiao Chen's 5 years of cultivation had benefited greatly. However, on this day, Xiao Chen could not hide the excitement in his heart. After 5 years of waiting, Jun Wuya was finally going to help resurrect Qin Shuru and the others. Previously, Jun Wuya had asked Xiao Chen to wait patiently for 5 years. Now, the time had finally come. Because of Luan Luan, the remnant souls of Qin Shuru and the others had recovered. Now, with Jun Wuya's help, resurrecting Qin Shuru and the others would not be too much of a problem. However, what made Xiao Chen a little depressed was that Luan Luan was very strange. 5 years had passed, but her appearance had not changed at all. She was still a 4 or 5-year-old girl. She did not look like she had grown up at all. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1872. Time seemed to have stopped for Luan Luan. Luan Luan had not changed in the past 5 years. However, Jun Wuya told Xiao Chen that this was normal due to Luan Luan's special identity, and there was no need to worry. After hearing Jun Wuya's words, Xiao Chen was relieved. On this day, because Jun Wuya was going to revive Qin Shuru and the others, Xiao Chen, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, Wine Taoist, and Hong Xiu gathered together. Everyone gathered in the room. Jun Wuya was holding the necklace that contained the souls of Qin Shuru and the others. Luan Luan has contributed greatly to their revival. However, this necklace also played a key role. If it wasn't for this necklace locking up their remnant souls, I'm afraid these remnant souls would have dissipated long ago, Jun Wuya said faintly as he put away the necklace. Xiao Chen didn't say anything when he heard this. However, he was secretly grateful to Luoli. It was really Luoli who had refined this necklace to lock up the remnant souls of Qin Shuru and the others. This way, Xiao Chen still had a glimmer of hope. Otherwise, without this necklace, even Jun Wuya wouldn't have been able to do anything. It should be known that a remnant soul couldn't exist in this world for a long time. Without a soul, there was naturally no hope for revival. With that, a white light flashed in Jun Wuya's hand. Under the white light, the necklace slowly rose into the air. Then, the beads on the necklace gradually separated. Each bead contained a person's soul. These people were all extremely important to Xiaochen, including Qin Yao and Qin Luo, who were once the four girls. Xiaochen and the others couldn't understand Jun Wuya's hand seals at all. However, as Jun Wuya's hand seals moved, the white light became more and more intense. At the same time, a gentle aura quickly spread in the room. As the white light grew, the beads quickly shattered. Then, Xiaochen saw everyone's souls slowly emerge from these beads. Everyone's faces could be vaguely seen. Seeing this, Xiaochen couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. At the same time, an unconcealable excitement appeared in his eyes. After so many years, reviving everyone had always been Xiaochen's goal. Now, he finally saw hope. Not daring to disturb Jun Wuya, Xiaochen quietly looked at the few souls in midair. At the same time, Jun Wuya also softly shouted, "Condense." Then, everyone's souls quickly turned into balls of white light. Each ball of light was about 1 meter in size. A total of 12 balls of light were suspended in midair. After doing all this, Jun Wuya stopped what he was doing and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Then, he took out many heavenly treasures from his storage ring. These heavenly treasures were all items from the Great Thousand World. In the 8 Wastelands world, any one of them was enough to make everyone go crazy. However, at this time, in order to revive Qin Shuru and the others, Jun Wuya was not stingy in the slightest. There was no other way. In order to reverse yin and yang and revive the dead, he definitely needed a lot of heavenly treasures. Moreover, he had to cooperate with the superb means of an almighty at Jun Wuya's level in order to succeed. For example, although Luo Li immediately protected the remnant souls of Qin Shuru and the others, he was unable to revive them. One by one, Jun Wuya threw the heavenly treasures into the 12 balls of light. As these heavenly treasures entered, the 12 balls of light in front of him flickered with a dazzling white light. The energy became purer and more powerful. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. During these 5 days, Jun Wuya did not rest at all. It took him a total of 5 days to successfully integrate the heavenly treasures into the 12 balls of light. After doing all this, Jun Wuya exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His face was slightly pale. It was extremely difficult to reverse yin and yang, even for an almighty like Jun Wuya, and it consumed a lot of energy. Moreover, this time, if it were not for various reasons, even Jun Wuya would not have been able to go against the heavens and change fate. It could be said that Luo Li's contribution in reviving Qin Shuru and the others could not go unnoticed. Similarly, Luan Luan's contribution could not go unnoticed. Without any of them, Jun Wuya would not have been able to help. Fortunately, although it was very difficult, overall it was smooth. At least, there were no accidents in the middle. After successfully integrating the heavenly treasures into the 12 balls of light, Jun Wuya secretly breathed a sigh of relief. At this point, he should not have to worry anymore. Seeing Jun Wuya slowly come back to his senses, Xiaochen personally poured a cup of tea for Jun Wuya. Seeing this, Jun Wuya slightly hesitated, took a sip, and then said softly, "Next, let's wait. Now all we have to do is wait. Once the energy of those heavenly treasures is completely refined and their bodies are reforged, they will be revived. How long will that take?" Hearing this, Xiaochen asked expectantly. "You little brat, at most 3 years. So don't worry, just wait patiently." Hearing this, Jun Wuya laughed and scolded. The most dangerous step had been completed. The next step would take time. After all, these heavenly treasures were only integrated into the balls of light by Jun Wuya. The energy within had not yet been absorbed by the souls of Qin Shuru and the others. The soul body was fragile, not to mention that Qin Shuru and the others did not have physical bodies. Therefore, if they wanted to absorb and refine the energy, even with Jun Wuya's help, they could not be too hasty. They had to do it gradually. Hearing Jun Wuya's words, Shao Chen nodded in agreement. At the same time, his heart was filled with gratitude. Although he did not know how Jun Wuya was able to reverse yin and yang, Shao Chen knew that the price was definitely not low. Shao Chen's guess was right. In order to reverse yin and yang, Jun Wuya had indeed paid a huge price. Not to mention other things, just the value of the heavenly treasures that had already been used was enough to rival all the treasures in the entire Hachibara Senkai. He had used a power that surpassed the Hachibara Senkai in order to revive Qin Shuru and the others. This was a huge price to pay. However, with Jun Wuya's status, the treasures he had were naturally not something that the Hachibara Senkai could compare to. Even so, it could be said that Jun Wuya had spent a lot of money. Feeling Shao Chen's grateful gaze, Jun Wuya smiled slightly and said, "Well, kid, you should cultivate well. That's all for now. From now on, you can come here once every 10 days to give you peace of mind. For the rest of the time, you can cultivate with peace of mind." Of course, Jun Wuya could not let Shao Chen stay here all day, but he could not let Shao Chen not come at all. Otherwise, Shao Chen would always be worried about this matter, and it would not be good for his cultivation. Therefore, after thinking about it, Jun Wuya agreed to let Shao Chen come here once every 10 days. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote recommend it. Chapter 1873. Shao Chen naturally wouldn't object to Jun Wuya's decision. Moreover, Jun Wuya himself had said that they could only wait. Therefore, it was meaningless for Shao Chen to stay here. Jun Wuya's intervention and the matter of Qin Shuru and the others had completely relieved Shao Chen. Although Qin Shuru and the others had not been resurrected yet, Shao Chen knew that everything would not be a problem as long as there was enough time. Jun Wuya resumed his cultivation again. He didn't know if he was deliberately taking revenge on Shao Chen or for some other reason. Anyway, in the following days, Shao Chen's cultivation intensity was increased by a lot. Compared to the first 5 years, it was more than doubled. Even with Shao Chen's perseverance, it was somewhat difficult for him to accept such a high-intensity cultivation. Looking at Shao Chen, who was as tired as a dead dog every day, Jun Wuya secretly laughed in his heart and was secretly shocked at the same time. Truth be told, Jun Wuya did have some evil intentions when he decided to increase Shao Chen's training intensity. After all, Shao Chen had cost him a lot this time. Even though it was Jun Wuya's resources, it was not a bad idea to tease Shao Chen a little. But soon, Jun Wuya began to be surprised because he thought that Shao Chen would not be able to persist at all. However, it turned out that Shao Chen actually succeeded in persevering. It had been half a year since Jun Wuya resurrected Qin Shuru and the others. In this half a year, Shao Chen lived a life worse than death every day. However, Shao Chen completed the cultivation tasks that Jun Wuya had arranged for him every day. Jun Wuya was secretly shocked, and at the same time, he slowly changed his view of Shao Chen. It should be noted that even in the vast 1,000 worlds, there were not many people who could persist with such intense training. Even if there were, it would only be for a short period of time. At least, Jun Wuya had never seen someone like Shao Chen who could cultivate for as long as half a year without slacking off, rain or shine. Such perseverance made Jun Wuya completely recognize Shao Chen as his disciple. He was no longer like before, when he only accepted Shao Chen as his disciple because of the heaven-breaking sword Venerable's request. At this time, Jun Wuya truly recognized Shao Chen. In Jun Wuya's opinion, talent was indeed indispensable. However, perseverance was more important than talent. This was because for someone like Junwuya, as long as he had the slightest bit of talent, Junwuya had the ability to nurture him. However, if one wanted to become a true powerhouse, relying on Junwuya's nurturing alone was far from enough. A master could lead the way, but cultivation depended on the individual. If one did not have the perseverance to persevere, then even a good master like Junwuya would not be of any use. It was no exaggeration to say that Xiao Chen's perseverance was the strongest that Junwuya had ever seen. There were many times when Junwuya thought that Xiao Chen should give up, but Xiao Chen gritted his teeth and persevered. This kid actually added more food for himself. On this day, after Junwuya finished drinking with the wine Taoist, it was already late at night. When he inadvertently passed by Xiao Chen's courtyard, Junwuya discovered that Xiao Chen, who should have been resting, was actually still cultivating. Moreover, the cultivation content was not set up by him. In other words, Xiao Chen had added additional training content to the content that he had set up. Junwuya was slightly taken aback. But shortly after, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile and a gratified look flashed in his eyes. He didn't disturb Xiao Chen and walked away quietly. However, he muttered under his breath, "Seems like this kid needs to increase the intensity again." Haha, not bad, as expected. Early the next morning, Junwuya came to Xiao Chen's usual training place, a deep valley. He looked at Xiao Chen and said with a smile, "How is it? Have you adapted to master's training in half a year?" "Yes." Upon hearing this, Xiao Chen nodded honestly. Although he was still tired, he was indeed much better than before. This was also a sign that he had adapted. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Junwuya pretended to nod seriously and said, "Very good, but this is only the beginning. The path of cultivation is a process of constantly breaking one's own limit. Only by constantly attacking one's own limits and breaking through one's own limits can one become stronger. From today onwards, increase the intensity of your training by 30% on top of your current foundation." He gave Xiao Chen another 30% increase in his training intensity. In this regard, Xiao Chen nodded and agreed without hesitation. In Xiao Chen's opinion, Junwuya wouldn't harm him. Besides, if he wanted to become a powerful person, he had to put in double the effort. Thinking about it, perhaps there were people in the Great Thousand World who had it tougher than him. Xiao Chen trusted Junwuya very much, but he obviously did not expect that no one in the vast thousand worlds would cultivate as intensely as Junwuya. It was not to say that no one in the vast thousand worlds could do it, but there was definitely no one like Junwuya. He was simply playing with his life. In the following days, as expected, Xiao Chen was drilled to the brink of death by Junwuya. It could be said that he was in pain but happy at the same time. On the other side, Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling were probably stimulated by Xiao Chen. The two of them were also training as if their lives depended on it. Obviously, they didn't want Xiao Chen to widen the gap between them. Time passed day by day. Every once in a while, from half a year to a year, Junwuya would increase the intensity of Xiao Chen's training. Of course, the further one went, the smaller the increase. After all, the further one went, the harder it was to break through one's limits. Therefore, Junwuya didn't increase the intensity of Xiao Chen's training too much like before. This was because if he did that, not only would it not benefit Xiao Chen, but it would also completely crush Xiao Chen. This was like a rubber band. You could always tighten it, but you couldn't exceed the critical point. Otherwise, the rubber band would break. It was like wrestling in the muddy water of hell. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed in such a difficult training. On this day, Xiao Chen changed into a brand new white robe and came to the room where Qin Shuru and the others were. 3 years had passed. According to Junwuya, Qin Shuru and the others had successfully rebuilt their physical bodies. Moreover, their souls had also successfully merged with their physical bodies. It was likely that they would wake up in the next few days. The ball of light had disappeared. Qin Shuru and the others were lying on the bed in the room. Although Xiao Chen didn't say anything, anyone could see how excited Xiao Chen was at this time. He couldn't help but tremble. He didn't force Xiao Chen to train anymore. Instead, he gave Xiao Chen a few days off so that Xiao Chen could accompany Qin Shuru and the others and wait for them to wake up. Looking at the four women in front of him, whose eyes were tightly shut but whose appearances were still unparalleled, Xiao Chen's eyes were slightly red. He said softly, "Shuru, Baihua, Lingyao, Tianyue, you're finally back. Please add, please vote, please recommend." Chapter 1874. Qin Shuru, Flower Fairy, Gu Lingyao, Tianyue, Shao Qing, Bai Ruyue, Qin Yao, Qin Luo, Fei Mei, Anlan, Lu Zhu, and Si Ju. Tears welled up in Xiao Chen's eyes as she watched everyone lying peacefully on the bed. As far as Xiao Chen could remember, it had been a very, very long time since he had seen everyone's faces. Although Xiao Chen had seen them countless times in his dreams, those were just dreams. They were illusory and would shatter at the slightest touch. Every time he woke up, everything in the dream no longer existed. However, this time, everyone appeared in front of Xiao Chen in the flesh. This made Xiao Chen feel both happy and emotional. All along, Xiao Chen's goal had been to revive everyone. But when Xiao Chen really came to this step, perhaps only she knew how emotional she felt. For 3 days, Xiao Chen didn't take a single step out of the room. On the 4th day, Xiao Chen, who had been guarding Qin Shuru and the other 3 ladies, sensed Qin Shuru's eyelids twitching. Upon sensing this change, Xiao Chen was taken aback at first, but soon she was overjoyed. Then, under Xiao Chen's gaze, Qin Shuru opened his eyes slowly. At first, Qin Shuru was confused. But when he saw Xiao Chen, he cried out in disbelief. "Darling, resurrection from the dead." Qin Shuru clearly remembered that he was supposed to be dead. But who would have thought that he would be able to see Xiao Chen one day? Qin Shuru could still vividly remember the feeling before his death. But after hearing Qin Shuru's words, Xiao Chen didn't wait for her to finish her sentence. She pulled her into her arms and cried out emotionally with reddened eyes. Shuru! Xiao Chen hugged Qin Shuru excitedly. Xiao Chen had been waiting for this moment for countless years. Ever since they escaped from the 7th wilderness, Xiao Chen had been looking forward to this moment. And now, he could finally hold her in his arms again. There were many things and people that one would only know how to cherish after losing them. After experiencing the separation of life and death, Xiao Chen truly understood Qin Shuru's position in her heart. Every night, in the dead of the night, Xiao Chen would miss the 4 ladies and recall the days he spent with them. He wanted to gently embrace them. But it was a pity that everything was impossible. The only thing that accompanied Xiao was the cold necklace. Was Shuru. 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 Shui. Shuru feeling Qin Shuru's warmth and Qin Shuru's rapid heartbeat, Xiao Chen didn't know what to say. She was back. She was finally back. She hugged Qin Shuru tightly as if she would disappear if she let go. Poor Qin Shuru didn't know what was going on. He was hugged tightly by Xiao Chen. For a moment, he blushed. "Hubby, what are you doing?" Qin Shuru had no idea where she was, or why she would see Xiao Chen here. She only felt that she had a very, very long dream. In the dream, she kept running, but there was only darkness around her. However, no matter how hard she ran, she couldn't get out of it. Upon hearing Qin Shuru's words, Xiao Chen cried tears of joy. "Shuru, I won't let you leave me again. Never." These sudden sweet words made Qin Shuru blush. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Qin Shuru was very happy to hear Xiao Chen's words on the surface, but his face was full of shyness. At this moment, on the bed beside them, they heard a sound. Then, Flower Fairy, Gu Lingyao, and Tian Yu slowly opened their eyes. Just like Qin Shuru, the three women who had just woken up were also confused. They didn't know where they were, but when they saw Xiao Chun and Qin Shuru hugging each other, Gu Lingyao was the first to react. "Hubby Yu, why are you here? Don't tell me you're also." The four women clearly remembered that they were already dead, but now that Xiao Chun appeared in front of them, Gu Lingyao naturally thought that Xiao Chun was also dead. Following Gu Lingyao's scream, Qin Shuru shyly broke free from Xiao Chun's embrace. Xiao Chun also got up and came to Gu Lingyao. He smiled and gently knocked the little girl's head. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I'm not talking nonsense. We should be already dead. Hubby, are you also dead? Are we in hell?" Upon hearing this, Gu Lingyao covered her head with an aggrieved expression and pouted. "Hell." Upon hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chun laughed heartily. "Haha, even if it's hell, as long as you're with me, it's also heaven. Don't you think so, my good wife?" As he spoke, Xiao Chun picked up Flower Fairy, who was still in a daze, and gave her a fierce kiss on the face, causing Flower Fairy to roll her eyes. After teasing Gu Lingyao and hugging Qin Shuru and Flower Fairy, Xiao Chun came to Tian Yu's side and slowly sat down beside her. Then, he gently hugged Tian Yu. Following that, Xiao Chun told the four women the whole story. Upon hearing that they had come back from the dead, the four women were stunned for a moment, but soon smiled. The four women did not care whether they were alive or dead. What they cared about was that they could be together with Xiao Chun in the future. Just as Xiao Chun had said, even if it was hell, as long as Xiao Chun was with them, it was also heaven for the four women. Furthermore, this was not hell. Gu Lingyao was the most lively of the four. She had just come back from the dead, and her active nature was on full display. She clung tightly to Xiao Chun, as if she would not let go even if she was beaten to death. Xiao Chun did not say much about Gu Lingyao's mischief this time, nor did he find it disturbing. On the contrary, he felt that it was very sweet. After explaining to the four women, the five of them went to Xiao Chun and Bai Ryue together. Looking at the two elders who were still in a deep sleep, Gu Lingyao was worried and pitifully asked Xiao Chun, "Father, are father and mother okay? Why haven't they woken up yet?" Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled without worry and said, "Don't worry, father and mother are definitely fine." Xiao Chun was not worried because since Qin Shuru and the other three women had woken up, his parents would definitely be fine. Then, Xiao Chun checked on Qin Yao, Qin Luo, and the other four women. They still had not woken up, so he had no choice but to wait. About 2 hours later, just as Xiao Chun was talking to Qin Shuru and the other three women, Xiao Qing and Bai Ryue slowly opened their eyes at the same time. Seeing that the two elders had woken up, Xiao Chun and the other four women naturally surrounded them immediately and looked at the two elders excitedly. Everyone, including Qin Shuru and the other three women, had an extremely excited expression in their eyes. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1875. Xiao Qing and Bai Ryue slowly woke up. When they opened their eyes, they saw Xiao Chun and Qin Shuru. They were stunned. Without any warning, Bai Ryue immediately stood up and grabbed Xiao Chun. Then, she shielded Xiao Chun behind her like an old hen protecting her chick. After waking up, Bai Ryue's memory was still stuck at the time when everyone was being killed. She thought that someone was going to harm Xiao Chun, so Bai Ryue stood in front of Xiao Chun to protect him without any hesitation. Wasn't there an old saying that a woman was weak, but a mother was strong? In fact, with Xiao Chun's current cultivation, he didn't need Bai Ryue's protection at all. If he really encountered an enemy that even Xiao Chun couldn't handle, then Bai Ryue would have no chance at all. However, as a mother, Bai Ryue wouldn't consider these problems. She knew that if anyone wanted to harm her son, they would have to go through her first. This was a mother's instinct and had nothing to do with the level of cultivation. Seeing Bai Ryue so nervous, Qin Shuru and the other girls covered their mouths and chuckled. Xiao Chen's heart warmed and he gently hugged his mother from behind. Feeling Xiao Chen hugging her from behind, Bai Ryue continuously patted Xiao Chen's hand and comforted him. Chen don't be afraid. Mother is here. As she spoke, Bai Ryue began to examine her surroundings. She saw that there was no one else around and the room door was tightly shut. Moreover, the surrounding environment was very unfamiliar. This made Bai Ryue look strangely at Qin Shuru and the other girls who were covering their mouths and chuckling. Her eyes were filled with confusion. What was going on? Seeing this, Bai Hua Fairy came to Bai Ryue's side and smiled gently. Mother, we're all fine. Husband saved us and we came back to life. Came back to life? Hearing Bai Hua Fairy's words, Bai Ryue and Xiao Qing looked at each other. Then, the two elders turned to Xiao Chen at the same time. At this moment, before the two elders could speak, Qing Yao, Qing Luo, Fei Mei, Anlan, Si Ju, and Lu Zhu slowly woke up. When the 6 girls woke up, they were similarly confused. However, when they saw Xiao Chen, they almost instinctively stood up quickly and bowed respectfully to Xiao Chen. Young master. Facing the 6 girls, Xiao Chen hurriedly helped them up. Although the 6 girls had always been maids of his family, Xiao Chen had always treated them as family. There were never any special rules in their daily lives, and did not have any special rules. There were no special rules in their daily lives, and lived their daily lives were daily they were and had and the others. But, being helped up by Xiao Chen, Qing Yao, Qing Luo, and Bai Ryue were all filled with confusion. In the end, they understood what had happened after Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls explained. Hearing that it was Xiao Chen's master who had resurrected them, Bai Ryue looked at Xiao Chen in shock and said, Chiro, you're not lying to me, right? Can a dead person come back to life? Bai Ryue was not a martial arts expert, so she clearly did not know such profound things. However, Xiao Chen smiled and said, Mother, why would I lie to you? It's true. Look, isn't your son standing in front of you? Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Bai Ryue sized up Xiao Chen. However, Bai Ryue soon began to sob softly. Seeing Bai Ryue suddenly cry, Xiao Chen was momentarily stunned. He stepped forward and held Bai Ryue's hand as he asked, Mother, what's wrong? Faced with Xiao Chen's question, Bai Ryue looked at Xiao Chen with a tear-stained face and said with concern, Chen, you've suffered. Hearing this, Xiao Chen finally understood why Bai Ryue was crying. It was because of his appearance. After the initial excitement, Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls also felt sorry for him, just like Bai Ryue. Indeed, Xiao Chen's appearance was very different from before. He had a head of white hair and a pair of blood-red eyes. He gave off a completely different feeling from before. Knowing why Bai Ryue was sad, Xiao Chen smiled nonchalantly and said, Mother, our family is reunited. None of this is important. Anyway, no matter what I do, I'll always be your son, right? You're right. You'll always be my son. Hearing this, Bai Ryue smiled through her tears. Over the years, Xiao Chen had indeed suffered a lot. Of course, most of it was the pain of lovesickness. However, this was not important because the family was finally reunited. Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls, his parents, and Qing Yao and Qing Luo had all been successfully revived. This was enough for Xiao Chen. The family chatted a lot in the room. At the same time, Long Qing and Xian Yuan Ling came to visit not long after. Seeing that everyone had been revived safely, Long Qing and Xian Yuan Ling were filled with joy. They came to Bai Ryue and Xiao Qing and bowed respectfully. Father, Mother. Bai Ryue had always addressed Bai Ryue and Xiao Qing as her parents. Seeing Long Qing and Xian Yuan Ling, Bai Ryue smiled and held their hands. Good. Mother is relieved that you're fine. Bai Ruiyue was naturally happy to see Xiao Chen again. She chattered endlessly. On the other hand, Xiao Qing did not speak much. Although his feelings were no less than Bai Rui's, he and Xiao Chen understood each other's meaning with just a glance. As a father, Xiao Qing rarely revealed his feelings to Bai Ruiyue in such an unbridled manner. However, his concern for Xiao Chen was no less than that of Bai Rui. Xiao Chen knew this as well. The family was reunited and everyone was extremely excited. Then, Xiao Chen personally brought everyone to visit Junwei. Seeing that everyone had been successfully revived, Junwei said with a smile, "You have good luck with women." Haha. Junwei's words were true. Qin Shuru, Bai Huaferi, Gu Lingyao, Tianyue, and Hongxiu were all outstanding beauties. Moreover, the 5 of them were dead set on Xiao Chen. Indeed, he had good luck with women. Even in the Great Thousand World, the 5 of them could become saintesses of the major sections. They had admirers all over the world. After expressing their gratitude, Junwei told everyone not to worry about it. After all, Xiao Chen was his disciple. As his master, he naturally had to help his disciple. After expressing their gratitude, everyone naturally gathered together to celebrate. The sky gradually darkened. Under the busy work of Qing Yao and Qing Luo, a table of dishes and wine was quickly prepared. Everyone sat at the table and drank happily. For a moment there was endless laughter. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1876. Everyone sat together, drinking and chatting. Especially with Luan Luan, the joker, everyone was very happy. After learning that Luan Luan was Xiao Chen's adopted daughter, Qin Shuru and the other 2 women, as well as Bai Ruiyue, were very fond of her, especially Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing, who was usually very quiet, was very fond of Luan Luan. He kept holding Luan Luan and teasing the little girl. No one would dislike such a cute little girl like Luan Luan. Luan Luan was also very smart. She already knew that Qin Shuru and the other 3 women, as well as Bai Ruiyue and Xiao Qing, were her father's relatives. As a result, Luan Luan was very close to everyone. In Luan Luan's world, everything was very simple. Luan Luan would also like whatever her father liked. Her father's relatives were all Luan Luan's relatives. As soon as the banquet started, Luan Luan already knew how to greet people. Grandfather, grandmother, first mother, second mother, third mother, fourth mother. She addressed Xiao Qing as grandfather, Bai Ruiyue as grandmother, Qin Shuru as first mother, Hundred Flower Fairy as second mother, Gu Lingyao as third mother, and Tianyue as fourth mother. Hearing Luan Luan's childish voice, Xiao Qing laughed loudly. He picked Luan Luan up and said with a smile, "Luan Luan, be good. Come, grandfather will hug you." Xiao Qing and Bai Ruiyue could no longer help Xiao Chen. The 2 elders had always dreamed that Xiao Chen could have children. Now that Luan Luan had appeared, the 2 elders' wish had been fulfilled. Although Luan Luan wasn't Xiao Chen's biological daughter, so what? Xiao Qing and Bai Ruiyue didn't care about this. Besides, everyone was a cultivator and had a long lifespan. In the future, Xiao Chen would definitely not only have Luan Luan as a daughter, but also many children. What's more, Luan Luan was so cute. Facing this little girl, no one would dislike her. For a moment, Luan Luan had undoubtedly become the apple of the Xiao family's eye. Even Bai Ruiyue had completely forgotten about the joy she had with her son. She wholeheartedly threw herself onto Luan Luan. There wasn't anything good to eat, yet the first thing Bai Ruiyue thought of was Luan Luan. When he saw how much the 2 elders loved Luan Luan, Xiao Chen had a faint smile on his face. However, Xiao Chen soon noticed Hongxiu, who was not far away, and he sighed helplessly. Everyone present was very happy today. Only Hongxiu seemed to be a little quiet. From the moment she saw Qin Shuru and the other 3 women, Hongxiu seemed to have not said much. She did not drink much either. She lowered her head and no one knew what she was thinking. In fact, Hongxiu had been secretly observing Qin Shuru and the other three women. However, after a careful observation, Hongxiu felt a little inferior. Other than her cultivation being stronger than Qin Shuru and the other three women, she didn't seem to have any advantages in other aspects. The appearance that she was once proud of did not have any advantage in front of Qin Shuru and the other three women. At most, they were on par. On the other hand, Qin Shuru and the other three women each had their own merits and beauty. Looking at the four women accompanying Xiao Chen, it would be a lie to say that Hongxiu didn't feel sad. She was a little jealous. Xiao Chen didn't know what to do for a moment. However, Hundred Flower Fairy, who was sitting beside Xiao Chen, noticed this and whispered into Xiao Chen's ear. "What, did our young master Xiao find another sister for us?" Among the four women, the one who was the most attentive was naturally Hundred Flower Fairy. Qin Shuru was indifferent by nature. Other than Xiao Chen and his family, he basically didn't care about anything else. Gu Lingyao, on the other hand, had a childish temperament. She was currently playing happily with Luan Luan. As for Tianyu, as a member of the Divine Clan, Tianyu's personality was very arrogant. She basically ignored people she didn't know well. As a result, due to their personalities, the three women naturally wouldn't take the initiative to talk to Hongxiu, let alone pay attention to her. Of course, even if they noticed Hongxiu's abnormality, with their personalities, they definitely wouldn't care. Only Hundred Flower Fairy was attentive enough to notice this. In fact, Hundred Flower Fairy had always been in charge of everything in the Xiao family. This wasn't to say that Hundred Flower Fairy wanted to seize power or something. It was entirely because among the women by Xiao Chen's side, only Hundred Flower Fairy could take care of everything and arrange the family in an orderly manner. Therefore, even though Hundred Flower Fairy wasn't the first woman to follow Xiao Chen, in the Xiao family, Hundred Flower Fairy did indeed have the authority of a matron. Qin Shuru didn't care about this at all. After all, no matter who was in charge, Xiao Chen wouldn't be biased. His love for the four women was the same. At the same time, the four women were wholeheartedly focused on Xiao Chen and the Xiao family. Therefore, it didn't matter who was in charge. Moreover, if Qin Shuru and the other two women were really in charge of the family, they probably wouldn't be willing to do it themselves. It would be so tiring. Hearing Hundred Flower Fairy's words, Xiao Chen smiled embarrassedly. Seeing this, Hundred Flower Fairy pouted coquettishly and secretly pinched Xiao Chen's waist. Then, she said with some dissatisfaction, "I really don't know how many sisters our young master Xiao is going to find for our Xiao family." Humph. Hundred Flower Fairy's words were indeed laced with a hint of jealousy. Not far away, Hongxiu, who was watching this scene, although she didn't hear what the two were talking about, she could still keenly feel the dissatisfaction in Hundred Flower Fairy's eyes. For a moment, Hongxiu felt as if something was blocking her mouth, and she couldn't help but tear up. Feeling wronged, Hongxiu couldn't care less about anything else. She got up and ran out of the courtyard. Seeing Hongxiu run away with her head lowered, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment. How could Xiao Chen not know that Hongxiu was good to him? But now, seeing Xiao Chen's expression of wanting to chase after Hongxiu but not daring to, Hundred Flower Fairy suddenly burst into laughter. "All right, young Master Xiao, you don't have to show such an expression. We already expected this." Saying so, Hundred Flower Fairy gently pulled Qin Shuru's sleeve. The two women looked at each other and got up to find Hongxiu. Seeing this, Xiao Chen secretly let out a sigh of relief. "You too, humph." Originally, Xiao Chen wanted to comfort the two women, but they didn't give Xiao Chen a chance to speak. Hundred Flower Fairy and Qin Shuru snorted at the same time and walked away. Towards Hongxiu's appearance, Qin Shuru and Hundred Flower Fairy were naturally jealous, but what could they do? Xiao Chen was becoming more and more outstanding, and from the looks of it, Xiao Chen and Hongxiu did indeed have feelings for each other. After all, these years when the four women weren't by Xiao Chen's side, Hongxiu and him might have gone through a lot together. Unaware that Qin Shuru and Hundred Flower Fairy had returned to find her, Hongxiu ran all the way out of the courtyard and arrived at a small lake not far away. She cursed softly while throwing stones into the lake. "Stinky Xiao Chen, damn Xiao Chen, I hate you to death," begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1877. Beside the lake, Beauty Hongxiu cursed under her breath. At this moment, Qin Shuru and Fairy of 100 Flowers slowly walked up behind Beauty Hongxiu. Hongxiu's sharp senses detected the appearance of the two of them. She immediately turned her head around. Hongxiu was clearly startled when she saw the two ladies. However, the expression on her face quickly became somewhat perturbed. Although Beauty Hongxiu's cultivation was much higher than that of Qin Shuru and Fairy of 100 Flowers, she acted as if she had done something wrong in front of the two women. In response, Fairy of 100 Flowers smiled gently and took the initiative to speak to Beauty Hongxiu. "You're Beauty Hongxiu, right? I've heard my husband mention you before." "Yes." Beauty Hongxiu lowered her head and replied in an extremely soft voice. Knowing that Qin Shuru and Fairy of 100 Flowers were both Xiao Chen's women, Beauty Hongxiu was completely different from her usual self. She was somewhat nervous and uneasy. Fairy of 100 Flowers continued to smile at the nervous Beauty Hongxiu. "You don't have to be like this. We don't mean any harm." Fairy of 100 Flowers and Qin Shuru naturally did not come to make things difficult for Beauty Hongxiu. Otherwise, they would not have only come with the two of them. Although Xiao Chen did not go into detail about his relationship with Beauty Hongxiu, he still briefly explained the situation. They knew that Beauty Hongxiu had been by Xiao Chen's side all these years, and that Beauty Hongxiu's love for Xiao Chen was real. This did not mean that they could not accept a woman like Beauty Hongxiu. After all, in the world of warriors, it was not strange for the strong to have many close female friends. The only thing that needed to be proven was that if Beauty Hongxiu really wanted to be with Xiao Chen and enter the doors of the Xiao family, then she would have to follow Xiao Chen's lead from now on. No matter what happened, she would have to put Xiao Chen and the Xiao family's interests first. Even if the Xiao family and the Hachibra Senkai were to clash in the future, Beauty Hongxiu would have to stand firmly on the Xiao family's side. Of course, this was only a hypothesis. After all, with the relationship between Xiao Chen and Luoli, there should not be any conflict between the Xiao family and the Hachibra Senkai. However, Beauty Hongxiu had to have this awareness, and this was what Fairy of 100 Flowers and Qin Shuru valued the most. They did not want Xiao Chen's backyard to be on fire one day. After chatting with Beauty Hongxiu for a while and sensing that she was no longer as nervous as before, Fairy of 100 Flowers said seriously, "Sister Beauty Hongxiu, we have no objections if you want to be with Xiao Chen. However, once you enter the doors of the Xiao family, you will be a member of the Xiao family from now on. No matter what happens, you cannot betray the Xiao family. Even if the Xiao family and the Hachibra Senkai were to clash in the future, you can only stand on the Xiao family's side. Can you do that?" This was a very serious question, so Fairy of 100 Flowers' expression was very serious. Hearing this, Beauty Hongxiu looked at Fairy of 100 Flowers with determination and said, "Yes." It was impossible to say that Beauty Hongxiu had deep feelings for the Xiao family. After all, Beauty Hongxiu had just come into contact with the Xiao family. However, in Beauty Hongxiu's heart, she would never betray Xiao Chen. There was no doubt about this. Therefore, Beauty Hongxiu naturally would not betray the Xiao family. Hearing Beauty Hongxiu's words, Fairy of 100 Flowers smiled again. Then, she turned to Qin Shuru and said, "Sister Shuru, what do you think?" After all, Qin Shuru was the first woman to be with Xiao Chen. Although in Xiao Chen's eyes, all the women were the same, Qin Shuru's opinion was often valued by the women. Therefore, it was normal for Fairy of 100 Flowers to ask for Qin Shuru's opinion. In response to Fairy of 100 Flowers' question, Qin Shuru looked at Beauty Hongxiu indifferently and finally nodded and said, "I have no objections." Since Qin Shuru had no objections, Fairy of 100 Flowers smiled and then took Beauty Hongxiu's hand and said with a smile, "Let's go, sister." Since she took the initiative to call Beauty Hongxiu sister, Fairy of 100 Flowers had accepted Beauty Hongxiu's existence. Then, the three women returned to their residence. Because they had chatted for a long time by the lake, when the three women returned to the courtyard, the banquet had already ended. Shao Qing and Bai Ruiyue had already gone to rest. As for Jun Wuya and the wine Taoist, needless to say, the two of them must have something to do and went to drink alone. They were two drunkards. They went to the backyard. Because of Qin Shuru and the other women's resurrection, Xiao Chen's family already had their own courtyard. Bringing Beauty Hongxiu along, they met Xiao Chen in the backyard. Seeing the three women return, Xiao Chen, who had been waiting in the courtyard, couldn't help but smile. The matter had been resolved successfully. This was indeed good news for Xiao Chen. Otherwise, if Beauty Hongxiu and Qin Shuru's four women were hostile to each other, Xiao Chen would indeed be in trouble. After all, it was impossible for Xiao Chen to give up on Beauty Hongxiu. How could Xiao Chen not understand Beauty Hongxiu's feelings for him? But now, at least there was no danger of a fire in the backyard. They went to the pavilion in the courtyard. Holding Beauty Hongxiu's hand, Fairy of 100 Flowers charmingly rolled her eyes at Xiao Chen and said coquettishly, "Pervert, you can talk to Sister Beauty Hongxiu yourself." With that, without waiting for Xiao Chen's reply, Fairy of 100 Flowers pulled Qin Shuru's hand and left. Suddenly, only Xiao Chen and Beauty Hongxiu were left in the courtyard. Perhaps it was because of her conversation with Fairy of 100 Flowers today, but Beauty Hongxiu was a little shy when facing Xiao Chen alone. After all, although Beauty Hongxiu had been by Xiao Chen's side all this time, the two of them had never spoken of their feelings for each other. Xiao Chen was secretly amused by the shy Beauty Hongxiu. But since things had already come to this, Xiao Chen was naturally not a yes-man. Since he had fallen in love, why would he not dare to admit it? Xiao Chen took the initiative to take Beauty Hongxiu's hand and pulled her into his arms. Looking at the blushing Beauty Hongxiu in front of him, Xiao Chen said with a smile, "Xiu, thank you." It was a simple sentence, but it was better than countless sweet nothings. That night, no one came to disturb Xiao Chen and Beauty Hongxiu, and the two of them finally confirmed their relationship. After so many years of companionship, Beauty Hongxiu finally saw the sunrise and opened up Xiao Chen's heart. While Xiao Chen and Beauty Hongxiu were enjoying themselves, Fairy of 100 Flowers also told Gu Lingyao and Tian Yu about Beauty Hongxiu. Tian Yu and Gu Lingyao did not react too strongly to this. After all, the two of them already knew about Beauty Hongxiu. On the other hand, Gu Lingyao said with a mischievous expression, "Sister Fairy of 100 Flowers, what do you think husband and Sister Beauty Hongxiu are doing now? This little girl, who knows what she is thinking?" Upon hearing this, Fairy of 100 Flowers rolled her eyes and said, "If you want to know, go and see for yourself. Who knows, you might even be able to give husband the blessing of having 2 wives. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.